ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, October 17th, 2016. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and the first item, I want to note that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Tsuut'ina First Nations. The clerk tonight will be Ms. Jane Armstrong, and the first item is an introduction of late items. Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff is recommending that tonight's agenda be amended as follows. Under the Community Services Report by adding item 9E, the Jean Burns Building, and also we have a delegation for that agenda item, Mr. Rick Hine, the Operating Officer from Crankshaw Holdings Limited. Under the Core Services Report and Delegations, we are adding item 15A to the Core Services Review Implementation, a delegation, Mr. Tim McGrath. And also under the Core Services Report and Delegation, we are adding item 15B, Core Services Review, Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you. Council, any additional late items? Seeing none, can we have a motion for adoption of the agenda as amended, please? Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the motion for, we need a motion for the adoption of the minutes for September 19th, the special meeting of council. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. We need a motion for the adoption of the minutes for September 19th, the regular council meeting. Councillor Bestwick moving, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. And for the final minutes of September 26th, special open council meeting. And it is, can we have a mover, please? Councillor Bestwick, and seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item under 5A is under presentations, and it is the Canada 150 celebration. Mr. Wally Wells and Ms. Diane Johnson, co-chairs of the Canada 150 board, to provide a presentation. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for receiving us tonight to present the Canada 150. We're a bit behind. We wanted to get to you sooner, but we're here tonight and to enlighten you about what's been happening over the last 18 months and where we go from here. What is Canada's 150th sesquicentennial? In 2017, Canadians living in Nanaimo will have an opportunity to mark the 150th anniversary of our great country. Our 150th is an occasion worthy of celebration, but more importantly, it's an invitation to imagine what it means to be a Canadian in the 21st century. Reflect, think, and imagine. Canada's sesquicentennial is an important moment for our country, our communities, and the many people who call Canada home. It's a reminder to set our sights on the horizon, look to the future, looking to Canada's wonderful future, and reaffirm our identity as a progressive, forward-thinking country. It will be a time to reflect on where we've been, think about who we are today, and imagine our future. It's an exciting time for all of us. Canada's 150 is an opportunity to show our pride for what we as a country have become and what we will hope to be. Nanaimo's Canada 150 Committee. Community members and organizations that are planning the Canada 150 celebration in Nanaimo. What we are, we're the catalyst, the networking group, and the coordinators of all the activities that will be taking place. The committee is made up of representatives from the DNBIA, Nanaimo Port Authority, Vancouver Island University, the City of Nanaimo, Vancouver Island Symphony, Nanaimo Museum, Nanaimo Francophone Association, Tourism Nanaimo, Nanaimo Youth Advisory Council, Chamber of Commerce, and the Nanaimo Multicultural Society. The Nanaimo's Canada's 150 Committee is intended to be a catalyst in the community, acting as a network of activities and coordinating Nanaimo's community Nanaimo's community role in a countrywide birthday. The centennial in 1967 happened largely thanks to ad hoc committees who launched many different local initiatives. These central networks were the driving force behind the vitality of 1967, and the committee's role is equally crucial to the success in 2017. Canada Day Committee objectives: encourage participants to give back to Canada through gifts of time and energy in ways that leave a legacy for the future. Provide Canadians with the opportunity to actively participate and/or celebrate together, promoting and building a deeper understanding of Canada, its people, and what it means to be a Canadian. What we want to accomplish in 2017. We want to tell Nanaimo's story. We're producing, or have gone out for a request for proposals, and we're going to be producing a legacy show. We're going to celebrate our role as Canadians in July 1st celebration and the Canada Day fireworks display. We've never offered fireworks for Canada Day before, and we're really hoping we can find a sponsor to help us have one, because it would be quite sad if we didn't have some fireworks on Canada Day in Nanaimo. We're moving forward together. We've got a sing-along project happening. We're going to have a 150-voice choir, which will be performing at the Port Theatre and again on Canada Day. We're going to be outreaching to local elementary schools, citing some of our history and asking our young people what they'd like to see in our future. If each community has a story to tell, then Nanaimo Canada 150 Celebration Committee is responsible to shape that. This has been helping to generate and champion ideas for 2017 and making the necessary community connections. Through the support from the City of Nanaimo and other community partners, we will be able to launch and bring people together, shining a spotlight on how Nanaimo plans to make Canada's sesquicentennial a memorable one. We are planning a legacy show to share Nanaimo's story. The show, titled Black Stones and Bathtubs, will be a multi-act musical consisting of 10 performances going on into July. And this has always been a desire of myself, having worked in the past in tourism. The East Coast has an Anne of Green Gables, and I've always wanted and hoped that we could produce a musical production in Nanaimo that would draw tourism to our community. So I'm hoping it's going to be hugely successful, and we'll be able to continue it through in the future, not just in the 2017, but on into the future. The Nanaimo 150 Celebration Organizing Committee will foster the participation and awareness of other events and initiatives that take place from June 21st, National Aboriginal Day, through to July the 9th. Community Events Calendar. The calendar will showcase these events, plus the community-wide celebration. These events include a sharing of Indigenous culture for Nanaimo Aboriginal Day, event led by the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, June 21st, Multicultural Festival with the Nanaimo Multicultural Society, June 24th, a participation event that's being led by the Pacific Sport people, Canadian culture and heritage displays and performances, Canadian citizenship ceremony, Canadian World War Letters Project, commemorative 50th anniversary bathtub race, Festival of Banners commemorating Canada 150. And we're just now, when I'm speaking to the community, I'd like to ask any community partner that want to, or any community organization, to please contact us if they are having their own events in their neighborhoods. Or because David, who's with us tonight, David Mayo, is our Director of Community Outreach. And they can contact David by calling him at his phone number at his Port Authority, 250-753-4146, extension 251. We'll publicize that information later as well. And now Wally's going to take over and talk about budget.
This is so much fun, and we'll make it fun for the next year. It's every morning you get up with another email with somebody from another idea. Bike Coalition, for instance, approached us, and they're already planning some major races next year. We said, good, you're doing the work for it? That's fabulous. Get it on the calendar. And we've probably got 20 stories like that, and tomorrow I'm sure there'll be 2 or 3 more stories like that. There's just more coming out all the time. One of the other areas that we've been encouraged to do, and we're looking at right now, is a time frame approximately 150 days prior to the 150 of what we can do to kick off the events at that time. And there's some events that potentially could come together around that time. It takes us to about February. So when I show you the budget here, we would love to tell you we have secured all these funds, and we have not. Very recently we met, I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber has agreed now to put a box on their invoices to all business members for next year to make a voluntary contribution. Another issue that's come to the Chamber that they're prepared to coordinate the Chamber with Food Share. A marvelous suggestion. We're not sure it's going to come about, but they've suggested doing a dinner for 150 people out in the farm with food from 150 years ago and costumes from 150 years ago. Those are the kind of ideas that just keep bubbling and coming up. And then I'm smiling, yes, because every day you open your email, you find another of these ideas and they're coming out. So we have made a number of applications. You have money in the budget now, as is shown. I mentioned the private sponsorship is showing up there. Some of that is out there now. We're talking with a number of people like the Port Authority, the Airport Authority, a number of private businesses. I mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. There's an awful lot of in-kind contribution that will come out. We do expect ticket sales, and we're certainly, with the play that we're putting on, opportunities for sponsorship to make sure tickets are affordable. That is very, very much one of our criteria, that it's affordable for families, it's affordable for people who might not otherwise be able to pay for tickets to come to an event in the Ports Theatre. So we've shown you up there approximately $285,000. If we don't achieve that, then some of the things that we hope we might do, obviously we can't do. But we are still optimistic that we're there. Some monies have accrued. We could not have gone ahead with the play had it not. And we really just wanted to bring you up to date tonight. So the enthusiasm's there. We're having fun, and we're going to have a lot more fun up to July 1 next year. And we really welcome and thank you for the city's continued participation, both here at Council and on the committee. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There are questions for you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want you, thank you for taking the time tonight to come to us and talk to us about, I'm not going to say what centennial, 150. I appreciate that. However, can you clarify for me how much the federal government has contributed? Because it looks like $499 from here. Is it $49,000?
Approximately $50,000.
Okay, thank
But
you.
there are still other grant programs opening up.
Okay.
And there's grant applications continuing to go in. The biggest challenge with any of these is, one, they're national grants and there's only so much money. And secondly, there's some very firm criteria. So it's like anything else on grants, read it carefully.
Thank you.
I think we should be clear, too, that we've made application for the grant, but we have not received the funding as yet.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. There's a couple of comments, but first of all, thank you for your presentation. It's going to be a great event. Is the word sesquicentennial?
Yes, I had to practice it myself, Bill. That's the French word for 50, sesquicentennial.
Sesquicentennial. So I'm going to use that in Scrabble. But anyways, and did I hear the event is it's great. Like, of course, we're on Canada Day, but nonetheless, this event started on June 21st and going to July 9th. Did I hear that right? And there's going to be a variety of events going on in that window. Excellent, great. And my final comment I would have is the question is, I heard the Nine Mile Original Center, which is great, and Chris is also doing great work, champion things, and just hopefully that sooner or later, you probably have, you're waiting for a response, but considering where we are, and Will's here, we're in Snamo territory, so I hope Snamo is going to be involved in this process, because the history and whatnot since Coal Tyee and all the stuff before Coal Tyee and where we are today, so.
We'd very much, and we entirely honored if they would accept our invitation to partner with us.
Yeah.
We have delivered a letter of invitation to them. I believe it's to be brought up before the council, but to date I haven't heard yet.
Is there still openings, final comment please, is there still openings for the committee, like to join the committee, volunteer and help out?
Well, I'm sure the more the better. Yes.
Because one of the cities, in my view, and great historian is sitting in the crowd tonight, Mr. Fred Taylor, and he knows everything about Nanaimo from what one can imagine. So I just want to make sure the public's aware they can help out if they can. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We meet at Myers Norris Penny.
Yeah.
He's one of our sponsors. We meet there the last Wednesday of every month at 8 o'clock in the morning on the 4th floor.
Cool. Thank you. Last one.
And if I could just mention to Jerry, if you could give your youth advisory, your young person, a little probe to come back to he hasn't been at the table for a few meetings, so we'd love to have him there. Are you still the
Yeah,
counselor?
he was waiting for invitations
Oh my goodness! So he's not getting the email. Okay, we'll make sure that's
every Wednesday, right?
no the last Wednesday of every month.
I'll let him know.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I just want to thank the two of you and your committee for the amount of work that you guys put in the community as a whole. This is just one of the things you guys are working on right now. Always seeing Diana Johnston around doing something. Wally, you're a phenomenal person. You do a lot in this community, and I don't know if you get the credit you deserve, but you definitely deserve the credit. And everybody that's doing this deserves credit. Just another of the many volunteer opportunities and commitments that this community makes. And I just want to thank the two of you for coming up, bringing this to us,
Thank you,
and
Gord. It's
educating
a great
us.
honor to be allowed. To
Thank you.
represent the city. Thank you.
And my thank you for that, Gord, is the real win will be next year when our entire city has a great party. That will be my satisfaction.
Exactly.
Thank you. Before you go, I've got a couple of questions for you. I see a line item there under the City of Nanaimo, 2016 and 2017. Can you explain to me the timing on the request for that funding?
The timing for it, I believe the intent is to have that in your 2017 budget. I think it is already, I understand it's already in the draft budget, and staff have the background for council on that. So approval of that amount in the 2017 budget would be approval for use of that funds under control of the city staff.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Can we have a motion to receive the delegation, please? Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the mayor's report. And one of the things that I wanted to speak about tonight was how on Saturday night, when we were all standing by with biting our fingernails, wanting to know what was going to happen with respect to a significant weather event in Nanaimo, I was really pleased with our emergency response group and how they kept council up to date on their activities for that day in preparation for. So I got quite a list that came out on Saturday afternoon, and I just wanted to share it with the community as to some of the things that were done in preparation for that significant weather event. They included ham radio operators were on standby. Firecom brought in additional staff for the evening and have staff on standby. Fire chief authorized additional staffing with shift crossover staffing and crews on standby. Fire crews were reviewing their operational procedures in preparation. Island Radio was on standby for public communications. IT department was on standby. Parks staff were on standby for tree removal and clearing of essential routes, as well as potential trail closures if safety issues were present. The EOC initial call-out staff was at level 2 on standby. Public Works had night patrols as per procedure and staff on standby. Patrols throughout the evening observing conditions throughout the city and priority areas. The water treatment facility will be utilizing the auxiliary genset to offset potential power failure and avoid disruptions to water treatment plant. Extreme weather shelters were activated. The ESS team was on standby. Public education information to residents ongoing since Thursday was prepared. BC Hydro EOC was open, and they'd pre-deployed teams from the interior to the island. RCMP were operationally preparing. Sandbag program for residents has been ongoing for the past 3 days prior to the event. There were 10,000 sandbags that were ready at Public Works should they be required for larger events. Protection Island residents had received ample communication and thorough communication with respect to their preparations. Public Works were out in full force completing fall program for clearing debris over the last few days. So I know I personally saw a number of crews out cleaning catch basins that you wouldn't normally see them working at. So I want to congratulate our group. It was a non-event. This was a soft launch, if you will, to what could have been a much bigger event. And I want to congratulate all of the staff members that were involved that put so much time and energy, not only at the City of Nanaimo, but also at the regional district. I know that they worked tirelessly to ensure that they were fully prepared for that event. So thank you very much to all of them. The next item is under Corporate Services, and that is the 2016 Grants Advisory Committee recommendations, to be introduced by Councillor Thorpe, the Chair of the Grants Advisory Committee. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report starts on page 23 of our agendas. The committee, or subcommittee rather, met on October 17th. We dealt with 3 items. They were both items that we had deferred from the previous meeting to get more information on. You can see the recommendations there. We are recommending to award, I should say first of all that none of these were tax exemption requests. They were all for monetary grants. We are recommending awarding 1 grant to the Nanaimo Disability Resource Center Society to aid in their education and training programs. The other 2 grant requests were for money to cover previous year's taxes, and that is not within our guidelines at this point, and so we chose to deny those requests. At least that is our recommendation. So I would move the staff recommendation as it appears on page 23.
Certainly. Thank you very much. And there's no issues with doing them all together. Thank you very much. All right, so moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Harbourfront Parkade debt retirement. And the purpose is to present a recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee for council approval regarding retirement of the Harbourfront Parkade loan when its term expires on 2016 October 31st. Staff recommendations on page 26 that council approve the payout of the Harbourfront Parkade loan for the full amount of $810,791.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion. Councillor Bestwick?
Go on.
Okay. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Community Services Development Permit number DP 995 at 1880 Dufferin Crescent. And the purpose is to present council with a development permit application for a 2-story industrial building with a caretaker suite at 1880 Dufferin Crescent. There's a staff recommendation on page 30 that council issue development permit number DP 995 at 1880 Dufferin Crescent with a variance to reduce the required front yard setback from 7.5 to 3.65 meters, and the methodology and determination of that recommendation is contained in the report. So we have a recommendation. Mover.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion?
Just one question to staff. The neighborhood association comment, and there wasn't one, but could you please, who is the Western Neighborhood Association, and have we had any engagement with them? Not on this file necessarily, but at any time?
Your Worship, other than support through the neighborhood network, no. But where there is an established neighborhood association in the community, part of our notification protocol is to send a notice to that association. And at this point, we're just reporting that we did not get any response.
Just a follow-up, please. How long has the Western Neighborhood Association been relevant or in existence?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I'd have to get back to you on the date of when they were originally established.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, development permit number DP 1000 at 508 8th Street. And the purpose is to present council with a development permit application for a two-building mixed-use development at 508 8th Street. The staff recommendation on page 45. The council issue the development permit with the following variances. Reduce the minimum front yard setback from 4.5 to 0.74 meters. Reduce the minimum flanking yard setback from 4 meters to 2.33 meters, and reduce the required number of parking spaces from 87 to 82, and increase the percentage of small parking spaces provided from 33% to 51%, and the methodology is contained within the report. Councillor Brennan's moving this recommendation and seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I did have one question just to clarify for my information through you to staff, please. It's on the proposed variances. What stuck out to me was the front yard setback, which was quite significant. But am I correct when I read this report that the setback is only for a staircase or staircases?
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. That is correct. There's two small portions of the building which actually project beyond the face, the main portion of the building, and those are the two variances that we're seeking.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Background information on the management and protection of trees bylaw 2013, number 7126. And the purpose of this report is to provide information to council regarding the background on the management and protection of trees bylaw 2013, number 7126, and the process of enforcing the bylaw. Can we have a motion to receive the report? And is there to get it on the floor?
So
Councillor Kipp, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Beswick? Yes. Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Kipp?
Thank you. Just if staff can refer to page 63 regarding enforcement. On the dots, there's basically 6 dots. They say that the following factors are taken into consideration when choosing the route of enforcement. Previous infractions. So that would be someone who was charged with taking trees down, or is it just someone who's been reported, or that's kind of nebulous to me. I'll give you a second one to think of that one too. And then on the last dot, or second to last dot, existing knowledge of the bylaw, experienced developer of tree removal company. Is that correct language, or is that or? Because tree removal companies that I know aren't that experienced in just leaving some trees. Some companies. As I can say, across from my place at the Cypress Street Apartments, there were some beautiful trees, mature trees on site, and they were taken down to make a straight parking lot line. So can you answer the previous infractions? And then the consequences of removal too. I'd like to talk about the sedimentation of watercourses, destruction of fish habitat. Is First Nations involved? Because fish habitat's an important one to them. So do they review any of these that may be consequential to fish habitat? Thank you.
Thank you. Your Worship, I guess I would start with the easiest one to answer, and that looks like there is a typo there. So it should say under the 5th bullet, experienced developer or tree removal company. So simply, if we're dealing with somebody who we know has a history of working with the city and we know who understands our bylaws and requirements, but for whatever reason decides to ignore them, it might be an opportunity to look for enforcement. So your first question was on previous infractions. So it could be either a party of which we have issued tickets to in the past, or parties to which we know have gone ahead and done tree clearing, and despite warnings or requests, have continued to do such infractions. So it would be an opportunity to pursue enforcement on those matters. And your final point on including SFN, generally any time that there's work in and around a creek, whether it's work that we've authorized or it's work that has been undertaken without approvals, we would include notifying the First Nations, yes.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions to staff. So this is simply a for information only report. And I just have a couple of questions, maybe comments. 1993, we established the first one, and then, fast forward 20 years later, and we revisited it and in 2013. Is it relevant today? I know things are happening very quickly in our environmental world and development and all kinds of things. Would you consider that the 2013 rewrite of our tree management plan is efficient, if you will, today?
Your Worship, I would say that the tree management, our tree management plan certainly remains relevant. I think as with any bylaw, it requires ongoing monitoring and updating, and we will be doing that with the tree bylaw as we move forward. So staff have identified some opportunities to make improvements to that bylaw, and we expect that's something that we'll ultimately bring in front of council, yes.
Thank you. Just to follow up, that was what I was hoping to hear you say, is that coming forward would be potentially some amendments or improvements to whatever our tree management. I wouldn't want to be 20 more years before we revisit that, and I'm not suggesting we would. So that's good news. And the $10,000 maximum, is that a license and fees and things that council approves when we do our bylaw fine stuff?
It's certainly established in the bylaw, so it refers to a ticket value, but it also refers to a maximum that could be issued through the courts of up to $10,000 fine. And that, I would want to clarify, that's $10,000 per tree, not per incident.
And we established those minimums and maximums?
We've established those in our bylaw, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Fuller.
Just looking at the third paragraph down where it mentioned the new bylaw builds on the original bylaw by not allowing any tree removal on a site that is in the development process. So prior to 2013, they could go in there and remove trees during the process?
Thank you, Worship. In general terms, the difference between the two bylaws is that previously we could issue a tree removal permit after receiving a plan. The step that's taken under the new bylaw is that we actually want to have the complete development application reviewed. Staff think that gives us a better opportunity to identify and address potential areas of tree preservation when it's taken within the context of the entire project.
And that would be where the next sentence comes in. The bylaw further requires that a tree management plan be prepared. I think that's a great idea. I don't know why that didn't happen when the thing first came out in 93, but hey, 2013, that's good.
Thank you,
I like that.
Thank you, Council. Ms. Sammer?
Thank you, Mayor McKay. I asked for this report to be brought forward. It was timely because we have an incident that occurred recently, and while there was improvements made in 2013, we may want to visit the fines and the enforcement side of this bylaw because an individual has allegedly clear-cut 40 trees off a property, which is quite an egregious thing to happen. We can't give the details of who because it's through in the prosecution stage, but is $10,000 per tree a deterrent for multi-million-dollar sites? Is it working? So I think it's something that's timely to take a look at and see what we can do to improve our ability to enforce. And as public notice that there are rules and regulations around cutting trees, and please work with city staff. They're happy to work with you to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. So the Motion to receive the report has been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Advisory Committee Commission minutes. First one, Grants Advisory Committee meeting held 2016, January 8. Second one, regular meeting of Parks Recreation Commission held January 27. Grants Advisory Committee meeting held August 24th, 2016. Inaugural Parks Recreation Wellness Committee held 2016, September 8. And Design Advisory Committee, a panel meeting, September 8. I'm going to call them all together unless anybody wants to remove any of them. Councillor Kipp? Won't move them? Okay. Actually, Councillor Pratt was seconding, so thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Discussion, Councillor Kipp?
Well, actually, I would probably after the motion. I'm wondering, because of our restructuring of our committees, is there any outstanding minutes that have been left in abeyance? Or, if a committee's disbanded, or one of our committees, is there anything outstanding? Is there anything we can do to waive anything and accept any of those minutes and put them to the table? I'm not certain if any are still. So that'd be a question. I guess after we make this motion, staff can answer that, or? Because it's not really congruent to this motion that's on the floor, but because we had a committee for the Colliery Dam and it was disbanded and its minutes never came forward.
Your worship, I'll have to take that under consideration and then report back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. See no further questions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Gene Burns Building. That's number 6 Commercial Street. And C, the green sheets, the addendum, and the purpose is to provide council with an update regarding the fire damage at the Gene Burns Building at number 6 Commercial Street, and to outline option available to council. We have one delegation, Mr. Rick Hine, Operating Officer for Crankshaw Holdings. Just your address or place, city of origin, please.
Rick Hine for Crankshaw Holdings, the MLPC.
Thank you.
Your Worship, members of Council. I'm here just to answer questions, give you an update on what's happening with Gene Burns Building. I know there's some community concern that nothing is happening with it. I can assure everybody here and in the community that we're working very hard to get things moving forward. Our hands are tied through the insurance process and through WorkSafe BC. Meeting with our abatement contractor tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and we're going to go over the site for preliminary development of some reports needed by WorkSafe BC so we can move forward on that. We hope to get that underway by the October 31st. We're also looking at putting a construction or a container just outside Gene Burns so we can tie hydro into that for power and security and things like this. BC Hydro is giving us some pushback, preventing us from tying any type of hydro to the building. At some point, they'd want that pole down there and China Steps removed completely. So that's basically where we are. We're having a lot of serious problem with looting. We board up the place and they rip it down. Yesterday, I boarded up the bottom by China Steps. I reinforced it because it was taken down. And apparently somebody was inside the building, it got trapped in there, so they took a brick and smashed out the window or the glass door of the Acme restaurant side. So that's now been boarded up. This is a continuation of a cat and mouse exercise with the street population of that building. They're in there practically every day, taking whatever they can get their hands on. But you have a report before you by staff, and I guess there's some options on there. And that's entirely up to council on how you wish to handle this. Staff has suggested in the report that our company, Crankshaw Holdings, is working with staff and we're updating them on a regular basis. And we also are updating the community through our own website. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you very much. Is anybody trying to push a button here right now? I don't see Councillor Yoakum.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your coming up here, sir. And I sincerely feel your pain on my building. I'm going through a smaller extent with my building. insurance and whatnot for my where I work. But just got this, so I was just wondering, is there anything the city could do differently or be a support? I read the website. I think it's your website or your business website, and I just want to reassure you, for myself, I think majority or the council or a full council, where we can be a support or be better, even better if we can, where we can be shoulder to shoulder. And I get what the website said, the history there and the money spent in the city and right in the heart of downtown. So
Yeah.
where can we help be better?
I think council just allows us to do what staff's allowing us to do and just work through the processes. I know the community is a little upset with us, thinking that we're not doing anything, that the building is still sitting there day in and day out. We had looked at taking down the upper walls of the fire side of the building, but the insurance company pushed back on that and said no, and if we took them down, then we wouldn't be covered under our insurance. So, like I say, we're trying to go through this. We've hired our own insurance adjuster. We have lawyers. We have quantity surveyors, all hired by us to try and work our way through this. Everybody needs to understand that these three buildings, and there are three there, are almost close to 100 years old, each of them. So there are a number of logistical issues with this building. It's on lot lines. It's on a corner of a very busy highway. There's a lot of logistical concerns and problems we're going through. Like I say, staff have been excellent working with us, and I know as soon as we start get going, staff will be there for us to support anything we're trying to do. And I know the DMBIA has offered to help out as well. But we are experiencing problems with some downtown businesses who seem to think that we should be doing a little bit more. And I know some of them are reaching out asking council that, maybe you guys should step up and force us to do things. That's the wrong direction. Forcing us to do anything will not help anybody out. I think if we all work together and try and rebuild this location, it's going to be better for the downtown as a whole.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thanks for the update, Rick. I just have a suggestion, I guess, to mediate the look of the building so it's not like it's an eyesore. Putting wood on doors isn't very pretty. So is there anything that you can do to pretty it up? I guess that's what I'm saying is, you put one piece of kind of...
Yeah, the wood on the doors was not a first choice. There was a lot of call initially for us to board up all the windows. We didn't want to do that because we didn't want to have a blank slate for Greek graffiti artists and every poster person in town to scatter posters around the building. We had looked at putting some stuff up and inviting the arts community to come down and create some characters on the wood, so we can or at least have some photographs or something about the history of downtown Nanaimo on the outside of the building. We looked at those things, but nobody came forward for that. Now, the wood on the doors is because people were breaking into the building and unlocking the doors and coming out of them, pushing shopping carts of goods to the retailers. You got to remember, there's like 15 people in there, and they were told that, no, you can't go in and get your personal goods, yet a lot of them right now are having that stuff taken to pawn shops by the looters that we're continually having problems with. And I understand the courts and where we're at with this thing. I had a discussion with the RCMP last night over this issue. I guess the concern is it's a burnt out building, therefore it's not a priority. But only part of that building is burnt out. The Acme side is not. But we continue to suffer losses through theft. Because like I say, they are taking sawzalls and cutting steel bars and bending them up so they can get things out. They're taking axes or any type of heavy objects, taking car jacks and spreading the bars so they can slide through them. I don't know how these guys slide behind this stuff, but they do. For example, the China Steps mural that we had up there, they were sliding behind it. And there was like a 9-inch between the wall and the frame. And they were sliding behind that and getting in through the windows. Then once they're inside, they bust holes in the walls, or they try and shove stuff out through the doors. So that's why we got the wood up against the doors. As soon as we can get it abated, we'll get it better under control. But we can't go inside the main floor, the retail section, because WorkSafe has said until you abate the top floor, you can't go on the bottom floor. So, like I say, our hands are tied. We're very, very frustrated with the whole process. And all we ask is the community to give us some time to process what we need to process.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegation, thanks for coming, Mr. Hine. Appreciate hearing and seeing you here this evening. This has been a topic of conversation, of course, and concern, and I certainly hear your frustration, and I think you can understand probably our frustration as well. But I know when you're dealing with insurance companies, nothing happens quickly. My question would be, from what you're saying, it sounds like a major problem is concerning the vandalism. Are there steps that you can take to reduce or eliminate that concern? Are there security companies involved patrolling the site? Is there anything that can be done there?
Well, I mean, we can look at security, but I mean, I've personally caught 4 people, and I've requested police assistance on those, but like I say, it's not really a priority. So now for us to deal with these folks, it's a safety issue, and security is very expensive, and for every dollar we spend, that's $1 less we have to rebuild. So right now, for example, we have people dressing up in hazmat outfits going into the building through broken windows in broad daylight under the nose of everybody. I had a construction call me last week, I guess, and say, I understand your abatement's underway. And I said, no. He says, well, we've seen guys walking around there doing the work. I said, no, those guys were homeless people stealing things. So, these guys are dressing up as regular construction guys, wearing high-vis vests and going in out of the building in broad daylight. So it's a major, major concern. I mean, we're trying to do everything we can. We're reinforcing doors and blocking windows and all sorts of things. But if they got the tools, they just use the tools to go past that stuff.
Thank you. If I may, I guess my point was, and I appreciate the efforts you're making, I guess my point was if there was a noticeable presence around the outside perimeter of the building for a period of time, that might discourage further attempts to enter.
Again, we looked at those, putting security around there, but it's an expensive proposition. We have lighting all around the building. For example, like I said, someone busted out the Acme door the other day, right smack in the corner of Highway 1 and Commercial Street, right in the middle of the daytime, and nobody noticed.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I think I had most of my questions answered through the other questions. However, through the chair to you, Mr. Hines. So are you saying that you are not allowed to go inside the Acme building to do anything in there?
Originally, we were not allowed to go into the Acme side for several months. We negotiated with the WorkSafe BC and was able to gain access to the Acme side. So through that side, we've been going in there and trying to get some of the Acme equipment out of there. It's the other side that's the problem, is that underneath the building there's a series of hallways, and once they're inside that side of the building, they can pretty much go anywhere in the building they want.
It sounds like it's almost an impossible security situation just because of the places where they can get in.
It is. I mean, last week I think it was, we walked in there and there's 2 people in there stealing things. We caught them, tried to hold on to them. They jumped through a little hole in the drywall that they had holes in. They tried to get out. We stopped them. Police came. We went inside the building, couldn't find them. Somebody had noticed them on the upper floor through a hole in the wall, or a hole in the ground or floor, I think they got. So we called for fire assistance to put the ladder up so we can see what's going on. But we never did find them because they are hiding in between the floors and the ceilings or in the walls. These people don't care where they go.
It's a challenging situation.
It's very challenging.
One of my questions, why I was asking that, was anywhere that you can get inside of, would it be advantageous to put, I mean, if they're getting in through the back side, then really it doesn't, the security is kind of a moot point unless you're going to put security guards on there. There's just not going to be any way that anybody could do that.
No, you'd have to have
and my
3
question was putting something up in the window so people can't see in.
Yeah,
Would that
the
be
visual
of any
pollution is a
advantage?
concern, and we're working with the young professionals in the NIMO. They had approached us, and we looked at doing some stuff in there, putting some light boards and things inside the windows and lighting it up. They haven't gotten back to us, so I think they've abandoned that. As part of putting this container down there, we're hoping to get the hydro hooked up, so then will give us some options as to what to do there. We can't hook power back up to the building, so we're seeing what we can do. But until we can get that building abated, There's very little we can do as far as getting rid of the fire debris inside the windows because we're not allowed in the building.
Mhm. Not really a lot of good answers to any of the questions.
These are the challenges that we're going through, but we're slowly going through the process. And like I say, I think if the community just understands that we are working on it, that we are not just sitting back and just ignoring it.
And what I'd like to say is thank you very much for coming and updating us on that. I know this is a very difficult situation, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for coming. A very unpleasant situation. I just have a couple of questions. The Gene Burns building is past the threshold of that 75% being burned.
The one part of it is, yes.
One
There's
part
3
of it.
buildings in one, so anything right to the tower, the stair tower, is that has exceeded the 75% of the bylaw, so it would have to be brought to code.
So is there a portion then that, or are you waiting for the insurance company to provide you the direction or approval or permission to do, because I think somewhere in a writing I saw that portion is a $300,000 hazardous material cleanup.
$310,000.
So can you help me better understand how that may play out? I know you're waiting for your insurance. Is that the key to the
We've hired a quantity surveyor that everyone seemed to agree on the onset, and he came up with some numbers, and we thought we were done with that and we can move forward, get development permits and stuff like this. But then the insurance company pushed back and says, no, we don't accept those numbers. We're going to wait for it to be abated, and then we'll go in and do our own assessment.
And is there any indication, if I may, is there any indication when that abatement may occur?
Yeah, so we're hoping to get the abatement underway. We've sent the contract to the abatement to the contractor with the start date of October the 31st, and we'll meeting with them tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the building to go through it.
And once that starts on October the 31st, what do you see the timeline and the
10 to 15 days to clear that out, and then from there the insurance company will have to. The whole problem is determining loss. How much is there, and does it actually exceed the bylaw? That's something that we have our own insurance adjuster, and even with him, he's telling us that you may need a mechanical engineer and a structural engineer and an electrical engineer to determine these losses. It's pretty bloody obvious it's a loss. I mean, anybody with any intellect would realize that that's a major loss. Why do we have to get out the pencils and paper and figure this out? I do not know. But it seems like this is what the insurance company wants to do. It's like we're not accepting anything until we get in there and determine it's a loss. Well, it is a loss. There's no roof on it, right? But until they get in and determine that, we can't move forward.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
No, thank you. I had the exact same questions as Councillor Bestwick. So thank you, Rick, for coming.
Thank you.
Clarifying stuff.
Thank you very much. I know everyone at council, on the council believes that this was a very tragic event, and it's always a shock when you go through a process that you don't do every day for dealing with insurance companies and engineers and all of the other extenuating circumstances. I recall an instance a few years ago with a brand new building that was under construction that burned down on Stewart Avenue. And the building next door, although it was not burned, there was damage to it as a result of the fire. And I recall the anguish that the property owners there, facing the fact that they still had to pay a mortgage because there was a stratified building. There's a stratified building, and that they didn't have adequate enough insurance to cover the business interruption. It can be very, very difficult when you get all of these surprises after an event like this. Thank you for coming today. I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for everybody, and we just wish you the best in moving forward on this project.
Great. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Motion to receive the delegation, please. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Now, we've received a report on this, and there's consideration for options. One of the options is, in the absence of further direction from council in this matter, staff will continue to work with the owner to prepare for remediation and redevelopment upon successful resolution between the owner and their insurance company. Does council wish to any other direction? Councilor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'm not wishful of, I don't think, of any other direction, but I just have a question to staff. Is the city at all in any position of liability as it relates to advancing or doing more or less or whatever status quo?
Your Worship, under the current situation, we do not believe so. One of the first steps that was taken after the structure fire was to have a review by a structural engineer to make sure that there was no hazardous conditions, that the remaining structure was safe and didn't pose a liability to the general public. So at this point, we have no concerns about that existing structure.
Thank you. So we move on to the next item. Oh, Councillor Brennan, pardon me.
Well, I don't have any desire to give further instructions to our staff regard to this, except that if there isn't a resolution to this within the next 30 to 60 days, that staff come back to us with another report and further recommendations, because while I have great sympathy for the owner of the building and the company, I also have a lot of sympathy for the businesses downtown and a little trepidation about travelers who come through our city and see our major intersection in that kind of mess. So I don't want to wait too long until we have another update from staff if things haven't started to percolate along.
Ms. Ammer?
Thank you, Mayor McKay. In our new process for tracking work and requests for council, it may be helpful if there's a motion that directs us to report back in 30 or 60 days.
A report back to council be brought forward within 60 days if there has not been any progress on that site.
I would just like an update.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Hung. Thank you.
Okay.
There's a motion on the floor now. Discussion on the motion.
So I'm not sure that was heard, just a report in any case.
In any case, just a report in 60 days.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Hong.
Oh. I'm good.
That's it. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just in the interim, and people have spoken about the unsightliness and looking in and all that stuff, and just thinking of other cities that have or our own city, that when we've wrapped buildings before, we've had buildings wrapped before because of work that was required to be done, and or wrapped with signage. God forbid that we have signage. But we do have, this may be an opportunity to kind of hide the unsightliness with having it wrapped or having it boarded or otherwise. And it's taken place in many other cities. If it's an extended period of time, because clearly we don't know when the finish line is. We don't know when the end date is. I think we're probably here tonight because we're getting complaints about what are we doing, what are they doing, who's doing what. And if there's a solution with wrapping it, I just refer to it as wrapping, but I think everybody probably knows what I'm saying. I think it might be worth considering.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp.
Just on that topic of covering the building or hoarding, as council's aware and a few people, I was concerned with the filth around the building. And I think we have to look at some way As Mr. Hines said, well, I know for a fact that that building's paid taxes all my life, 65 years and 100 years. So it's paid taxes. It's made money also, but it's had a lot of people. I had an office in number 6, 10, number 6 Commercial Street, one of my first downtown offices. And the building served a lot of things. And it sat dirty for 6 months. And I think that's what we have to look at as public servants, and that when something like this happens, it's destructive for all the businesses in there, the art groups that were in there, and the people. And we do have some services available. We have to look at how we can do that, because we went through about 6 departments or so that weren't responsible for the cleanup. And I understand originally there was a problem because there was archaeological workers in there, or person in there, and had artifacts that had to clean up properly. But when we walk through China Steps every day, and we have offices around there, we're going through to the Starbucks, we got to look at cleaning those places up for people and cleaning up for our citizens. So I'll look at talking to staff and see how we can, so that we come in and help. It's disaster assistance at that point for that business downtown and all those businesses. And I know we did a lot. The fire department was phenomenal that night. The coffee shop stayed open to help and things. But then it's 6 months later when the stuff and debris is still laying in the ground. I was there one day with one of the counselors looking at it. A kid walked up and just booted a piece of window that was there and broke it because it was fun. We said, hey, buds, don't do that, right? But it was laying there, and we have to do something to make sure we're doing public service at the same time during these type of disasters. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, and I echo what Councillor Kipp and Councillor Beswick said. Christmas is coming. There are a lot of small businesses downtown. They depend on this, so I'm willing to live with the 60 days. I'm hoping that they're going to have good progress. Like I said, even if this wood is painted, like A&B Sound, spray paint it, whatever you can do, take the stuff that's sticking out away, clean it up, put some murals, wrap it in something that, again, is unsightly, that we can't do anything, but on the exterior, if people are coming by and they're seeing it, it just doesn't look like it's an abandoned building. Maybe it's just a building that's just not opened. So it's something that we can do, and I'm hoping that they're going to have that done in the meantime before the 60 days, because Christmas is critical for all the people downtown. So I like to see that, make sure that this is something that doesn't fall through the cracks for the businesses down there. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before we wrap, I wanted to make sure that we're very careful with what next steps are. I've got concern about We Care. Crankshaw Holdings cares because they're citizens of Nanaimo. But I can guarantee you that there's somebody in Toronto working for an insurance company that's going to try and spend as little as possible on this project. And we have to concern ourselves every step of the way to ensure that a successful conclusion. And I want to be really careful when the report does come back that we understand completely what the consequences will be of any recommendations in that report. Because they could have significant ramifications to the building itself. I certainly would never have wanted to have been the person making the decision as to whether to rebuild, redevelop this particular project. It's a very difficult decision for anyone to make on this particular building, because everybody else cares so much about the ongoing success of downtown. And the fact that that portion of the building that burned is in fact on our heritage registry. So I just want to make sure that we move very carefully on this one. Thank you. So next item is bylaws with no accompanying report. The first one is that property tax exemption bylaw 2016-7231 exempts certain lands and building from taxation be adopted. Now, before we get into this, I wanted to just say that I've spoken to staff and I've spoken to some other mayors in other communities that have run into this before. There's about 150 properties, I believe, on this list. And I just wanted everybody on council, if there's anybody on council who believes that they may be in a conflict of interest on any of these properties, to speak now, before we move on to the adoption of the bylaw. Councillor Fuller?
Yeah, I actually really do want to speak to this, and it's not because I believe I'm in a conflict of interest. It's because I believe, and I'm quite sure, that I am not in a conflict of interest. Always have believed that. Stepped out last year stating the same, that I would just step out just to make it easier. So a few weeks back, we did the first 3 readings, yada, yada, and I voted on them. Shortly after that, you go on Facebook, and one of these groups that are in there are talking about judicial review and taking me to court. And I had really hoped that they would find the 10 people to do this, because I would love to challenge it. One of the consequences of this is that I do have a legal opinion. And despite the fact that people would have loved me to use the city funds to get this legal opinion, I've chosen to use my own. And I'll read that opinion out right now. And it's from Vining and Sanini, and it states, further to our brief discussion this morning concerning the source of your employment income, it is my legal opinion that at present you do not have either a direct or indirect personal pecuniary interest or any other interest in the subject matter of City of Nanaimo bylaw number 7231 that would require you to formally declare a conflict of interest under section 100 of the community charter. So that's the opinion I've got. It's an opinion I've been aware of. What a lot of people don't get is there's 2 steps to this. In September of 2014, what happened was we had a motion to renew permissive tax exemptions for another 3 years to organizations in an attachment. And that's all of the organizations. Even then, I don't think I would have a pecuniary interest. But I would likely just step aside just to make the process easier. And that's voting directly on the tax exemption. What we're doing tonight is we're voting on a bylaw that allows us to give those tax exemptions. It's not about the tax exemptions themselves to any individual organization, except those that come before us that haven't been on it, may want to be on it, and would get on it until 2017 when they're all renewed again. So as I say, there's no reason for me to step out, and I have no intention of stepping out. If people want to challenge us, you can do so. The means to do it are in the community charter, and I would really welcome it. I would really welcome it, because there may be other communities where this is happening, and other people that are getting lambasted and challenged, and it needs to stop. So I'm not stepping out for this vote. If anybody wants to challenge me, go for it.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Is there anyone else on council? Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Is this where we're permitted to discuss the list?
No, not at this point.
Bylaw.
The motion's not on the floor yet.
Oh, I'll wait.
Okay. All right. So, seeing none, we'll need a mover and a seconder concerning the motion that's on page 79. Moved by Councillor Hong and seconded by Councillor Beswick. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Question to staff. What is the estimated value of Schedule A and B permissive tax exemptions, please?
Through the chair, I will need a few minutes to look that up.
We'll come back to you.
I have no further questions. No. Councillor Yocum.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the schedule, but maybe it's the next subject here. I was looking on a list on page 96. Is that part of the same conversation?
Yeah.
I have a concern on page 96 with the Island Corridor receiving tax exemption, considering the fact is I think it was the island event, or they were charging fees to go over the railroads and charging down south to make profit. And we all know where, we just know recently with our yen, with the finances out there. So I got some concern with that. I may be wrong if they were charging for dollars elsewhere, how they accrue dollars with people at the tracks or something down the island in Victoria or Langford area. But nevertheless, it's been pretty. I just have concerns of giving tax exemption to ICF, considering the status of ICF today. Thank you.
Mr. Mema?
I'll still need a minute to read through this. So.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Ms. Sammer?
At this stage, we're at the adoption of the bylaw, but I will point out that the Core Services Review did identify ICF as an issue to look at, so staff will be bringing back a report on that matter.
Thank you. Will the question that you've posed, Councillor Bestwick, make a difference in how you will vote on this item?
Not really.
Okay. Thank you. Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Perhaps we can get to that during a later portion of the meeting. Next item, 15, Core Services Report and Delegations. Core Services Review Implementation Plan. The purpose is to present Council with the Core Services Review Implementation Plan and focus area statements for their approval and adoption. We have one delegation, Mr. Tim McGrath.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath, 431 3rd Street, Nanaimo. I'm very happy that this Council is taking the time to look at the core review. I'm very happy that this Council has included in that review the DNBIA, the NEDC, and the VICC, sort of like Nanaimo's alphabet soup. I have a series of concerns with the way the alphabet soup here in town is operating. I have filed a Freedom of Information regarding the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, but they've refused to answer questions. Heck, the NEDC did not even acknowledge that they had received the request. Now I understand some of the frustrations facing Council when they ask the questions. Rumor has it that the NEDC, a corporation funded by the generosity of taxpayers, is talking to lawyers. Heck, maybe even some sort of action has been taken against the city, which is again funded by the generosity of taxpayers. Is that true? How come the NEDC thinks that they don't have to treat the taxpayer or Council with respect? Second, the issue is the NEDC and the VICC. We've heard from the hotel people that there are some serious issues with the numbers. I know Council has asked for clarification, and I hope the Council gets to the bottom of the mess. But the NEDC takes credit for bringing these conventions to town. So who is supposed to be tracking this boondoggle? We see in the past Mr. Angus appearing in front of Council, claiming all of these great things, and we've been hearing a bunch of hogwash? Like really, who really believes the excuses as to why the NEDC is on their third CEO in 5 years? Obviously, the problem is much greater than they've led us to believe. Not only the NEDC, but exactly what is the relationship in the real numbers with the VICC? They're both losing a fortune year after year after year. So I'm confused about this alphabet soup here. I have also minutes from the DNBIA saying that the NEDC wants to be the face of the downtown. apparently, Andre Sullivan, the CEO of the NEDC, the one who took the mayor to China, is on the planning committee for the DNBIA. So is Mr. Whitty from VIU. Man, I can't even understand half these acronyms. So do I understand this mess correctly? What the heck is going on here? What does the NEDC have to do with the DNBIA? The NEDC claims success for bringing conventions here, and the VICC claims the delegate days that apparently are staying at Airbnbs. Because the hotel people say the people aren't in the hotels, and the DNBIA then pays out tens of thousands of dollars to encourage the conventions as sponsors to support the NEDC? Did council ever get a report on the expense spending over at the NEDC? Now, as far as the DNBIA, I understand that the only people putting money into the nickel terminal corridor is some real estate developers, a business who is trying to sell, the city itself, and the consultants, or Golder, I believe. As far as I see it, the only people who are going to benefit is the developers, the engineers, or the architects, and the real estate guy on the DNBIA. Mr. Moss and his crew seems to think that they don't have to tell the city anything about all the other tax money that they're trying to scoop. Back in March, Terminal Avenue was sent back to staff, and I sent an email to Mayor and Council quoting the results of that. The March 14th, 2016 Committee of the Whole meeting was moved and seconded at the Council, postponed consideration of the DNBIA's application for grant funding. It was to direct staff to prepare a report. To the best of my knowledge, that's never come back. But yet, Mr. Moss, chair of the DNBIA's planning committee, along with Mr. Sullivan and Dr. Whitty and a few others, appeared before council last month basically saying that everything was going smoothly. Well, I don't know how everything can be going smoothly if we haven't had the report. So I think we're running into a problem here. I'm really glad that council is looking after this. I think it has to be looked at very, very carefully. Somebody trying to pull the wool over our eyes? I don't know. I feel like we're in the back hills of Kentucky with all this inbreeding, though. Problem is, in these organizations are all being funded by the taxpayer, and none of them can or will give the taxpayer a straight answer. I hope they're going to give a straight answer to council, because from what I've seen, that hasn't been the case. So, council, I encourage you wholeheartedly to hold this alphabet soup inbreeding accountable. Thank you.
I see no questions. Thank you, sir. Motion to receive the delegation. Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Call question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Mema. You're chimed in. You're on the list.
Sorry, I think maybe we need to go through this process. I have a report to report the number for the previous item, so maybe we'll go through this one, then I'll come back and provide the report for the previous.
Thank you. Okay. So there's a staff recommendation that council approve in principle. The recommendation on page 127.
So there's a presentation. We're on the Core Services Review Implementation Plan now?
Correct?
Okay.
So the presentation? Go ahead.
Okay. So there's two recommendations before council today. One is to approve in principle the implementation plan for the Core Services Review, And the reason why it's approved in principle is that it's a living document. And as we go through, some of the items that we're working on may go quicker or more slowly than we originally anticipated, or some of the results in doing the work may bump up the need to address other projects in a more timely manner. There are 90 different issues to tackle in this, so it's fairly complex. Hopefully this PowerPoint presentation will help bring some clarity to it. The second part of the recommendations are what we're calling focus area statements. They're the high-level policy statements that were contained in the Core Services Review final report. In the executive summary, each of those different themed areas started with these high-level principled statements. They're meant to be the guiding principle for staff and council to work together to consider and make decisions on the implementation recommendations. So this report has an overview of the recommendations, some high-level recommendations for council, and we go through it in a portfolio of accountabilities. We've gone through the 90 different projects and notionally assigned them to different leaders within the organization. You'll see that they're with the Chief Administrative Officer, Chief Financial Officer, and Chief Operations Officer. Each of those positions are meant to integrate and coordinate across departments, so they're well positioned to carry out this work and lead. There'll be multiple departments participating in each of these exercises. The new strategic planner, which is now renamed the Chief Sustainability Officer, will be taking a number of projects as well, in addition to the Director of HR and the City Clerk. 90 plus individual recommendations. Where are we right now? 5 have been implemented, 27 are in progress, and there's 58 that are planned but have not yet begun. The second block there shows the allocation of accountability amongst staff, 22 with myself, 23 with Victor, 16 with Brad, 17 with Kim, 8 with John, and 4 with Jane. So we all have our hands full, and we'll be helping each other in each of these different projects. We're going to go through how we're going to carry those out. We've just notionally assigned when we're going to start them, but there's additional work that needs to be done. I referenced the 11 focus areas and the high-level statements. We didn't change the drafting language for each of those statements, even though we got feedback from council. They were a bit vague and maybe a little high level, but we wanted to keep the same ideas that were recommended by the consultants and not tinker with that. And they go through the areas of strategic planning, policy framework, staff capacity, finance policies, IT infrastructure, integrated maintenance, integrated purchasing, performance measures, community partnerships, grants, mandates, and monitoring, and efficiencies and streamlining. So far, we've completed one. Council adopted its strategic plan update. It was the first recommendation to set the stage and framework for the rest of the work. Some of these other things happened during the Core Services Review with the movement of staff, retirement and promotions to other municipalities. We were able to eliminate one of the positions and redeploy the resources of the Culture and Heritage Group Director. These are the ones that I'll be working on with staff and have been working on with staff. Tonight we see one of the first reports coming forward on the NEDC. Following on its heels will be the GMBIA and the VICC. All three of those need to move together in tandem because each of them impact one another, and Council is wanted to address these in an integrated, phased approach. And the next report will deal with how we're dealing with that. Staff have been actioning with Council, strengthening the partnerships with the school board. There was a recent school board council to board meeting that was very successful, and staff have brought forward a lot of different work projects that had the support of both organizations. Smaller working groups with the Sinema First Nation, the Port Authority, and Council have been meeting on an almost bi-weekly basis, working on a large number of projects of collaboration for parks and recreation, capital planning, infrastructure, and general cooperation amongst the organizations. We haven't looked at the one recommendation about pursuing the why to open a facility here, but certainly partnerships remain on the agenda. Next week, you'll be getting a report on the prisoner guard positions, and a couple weeks down the line, you'll be getting a report on the Island Quarter Rail Foundation. Nothing is started on the Departure Bay Activity Center. We're getting lots of feedback from the community, but it won't be well until next year that something will come forward to Council. Likewise with the Bevan Pool and the contracting in policy. Later on in 2017, we'll revisit additional operational reviews that Council may want to do for other lines of business. RCMP negotiations, we're in a long-term contract, so we're going to look and see what type of preparatory work we can do later in 2017. And this one goes on to the CFO.
Thank you. Out of the 23 that I'm responsible for, we've moved on with one, which is the consolidation of a position of a financial analyst from the RCMP, and we are now using a shared resource model, and so that position is now shared amongst several departments across the city. So a couple of things that are going on. Most of what we will be doing really is going to be around policy, and we'll work pretty close with the city clerk as well as Kim, the sustainability manager, to work through these. But what's on the plate right now, one is the purchasing policy and procedure review, and this will be discussed at the November 1st Finance and Audit Committee. And then we are also beginning work on the Bylaw 7073, which deals with user fees, and then the asset management piece, and then the debt policy. So those are the four things that we're working on that we believe we would complete in early 2017. We have a project to look at how we deliver, plan and deliver capital projects, project on revenue policy, and that's going to be coming through the Finance and Audit Committee as well. And tied to that is our cost allocation model. And then we will start, or have started initially, on looking how we can consolidate our grants as we go through the review of the grants and property tax exemptions process. We will look at the investment policy at some point in late 2017. However, there is two other recommendations that we believe can only be looked at beyond 2017, 2018, 2019, and those have to do with the introduction of a multi-year budgeting process. The reason for that is that only works pretty well if we tie that to a council term, and so we'll do the preparatory work so that with the next council term we can tie that to work in such a way that as the council sits down and comes up with its strategic plan and priorities for their term, we can actually cost that so that at the beginning of each term you can actually know and project your property tax rates for the rest of the term and how these things will be funded and delivered for that term. So those two items would all come beyond 2017. Thank you.
Is there anything further?
A few more slides.
More slides. Okay. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As Council can see up on the slide, there's a number of things that are going to stretch along several quarters for the city. What I've done is I've taken a look at several of the recommendations made by the report and broken out them into some key themes that we'll be working on.
Looking at the themes or recommendations, particularly with asset management focus, there seems to be a lot of things that have an asset management theme that we're going to be looking at combining to actually ease the workflow on this. Assessing the fleet management and procurement flow, reviewing timelines for implementation on the identified actions with more of a project management focus. So we're going to be looking at these things and breaking them down to abilities to complete and milestones that we're going to set forth. Looking at designing our performance targets and reviewing service levels to ensure we're meeting the community's needs and expectations based on a multitude of these things. And exploring current city policies and establishing whether they are relevant and or functioning according to council and the community's needs.
And Kim Fowler, who'll be joining us as the Chief Sustainability Officer, has a number of things that she will be undertaking. One of the top recommendations is to have operational plans throughout the organization. So she'll be working with each of the departments and putting those into place. We've tasked her with starting to put in performance measures for their service levels for all the different services provided by the city. She will also be supporting a cross-departmental social wellness strategy, as well as looking at the capital projects and community development improvements. Looking forward to her starting with us at the end of November. John Van Horn will be working on a number of initiatives as well. I will just point the ones out that he's doing there. Collective bargaining, prepping because we go into negotiations next year. The management bylaw 7000, the police support service building maintenance staff will be crossover with Mr. McRae's work, refine the HR policies and practices. And Ms. Armstrong?
These areas that fall under the city clerk all involve the bylaw services, and they fall under the strategic area of efficiencies and streamlining. So the first one, hotel parking fees and negotiations, that's aimed at increasing revenues by renegotiating the parking fees with the hotels. And the second one is potential closure of the community policing station. And that will close and then move staff to the services building. And then the third item is looking at operational improvements in bylaw services. So adding consulting services to look at parking, and then looking at ceasing the payments of $78,000 to the Vancouver Island Conference Center for security. Thank you.
So our next steps, the basic mapping out that you see on the 4-page attachment, we're presenting to council and we're asking you, is there anything that we're doing we're not starting soon enough? Is there things that you want to have prioritized, or have we done it in sync with what you're looking for? And then we're going to come back internally and fill out this template, which is our work planning template, which will help us identify the resources needed to undertake each of these projects, what type of consultation needs to occur with the stakeholders in the community. A lot of the projects will require some input. Helps us notionally understand the complexity of projects. Some are pretty easy to tackle. Some are much more complicated and will take a fair amount of time. So we're going to be working through those as a team and finalizing those over the next 2 weeks. And here's the grid that's probably not readable or legible on television, but that's the first cut at how we're going to move forward on this. And you've had that in your possession for a couple of weeks, so today we're asking you to approve that in principle and allow us to continue to report back to you. We're also looking for you, a motion to endorse the principles that guide this work.
That's it. Great, thank you. Any questions? Councilor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the information and the content of of the information. I have a couple of concerns. One is that the initiatives within the core services review are taking us through Q4 2017, which takes us into 2018, which takes us through 2 budget cycles, the one that we're in right now, and then the one that we're going to be in 2017. So the concern that I have is that it's 14 months of time will elapse from approval of this in principle to when we may see conclusions on many of the timelined items. So Q4 2017 seems like a stretch for me personally. That's number one for those reasons. Takes us through 2 budget cycles, and then we're into 2018, and we all know what 2018 is. It's an election year, so I can well imagine if we haven't made decisions for the 2017 budget cycle that drives the 5-year plan, and in particular 2018 in 2017, I find that we may find some challenges at that point in time. That's number one. So maybe you would like to respond to that, and then I'll go to my second point.
So what we've done is identify what types of things council can make decisions on now as you are in your 2017-2021 budget cycle. So decision points on DMBIA, VICC, NEDC, the gender guarding, and a number of other issues, ones that staff can get that work done and bring it in front of council so you're able to do a portion of efficiencies going into 2017. Then we've also started the ones where we think we're going to see the greatest return on savings. The purchasing work could be phenomenal in terms of the savings that it's going to bring forward to the city. As well as some of the, I think the bylaws, that's the fees and charges one. So we're trying to, in early 2017, get this work done so when you go into 2018 or even midway through the year, make those types of adjustments. So we did our best to put as much as we could to make that incremental or phased approach to having more efficiencies and cost savings. Some of the longer projects go into the end of 2017. I can let Victor speak to those.
I think the projects or the recommendations or areas where you would get the heavy lifting in terms of decision as well as impact to the city are the ones that we have tried to make sure we can get to and get done by Q1 of 2017. Then the rest, if you're looking at what's on the screen now, are more so process, not necessarily would impact policy as per se. So some of the work requires, as much as the consultants did come up with recommendations, we have to go back and do additional work internally in terms of looking how to operationalize some of these recommendations, and so we'll bring those as quickly as we can in front of council.
And a secondary portion to that as well, we have those ones, I'm trying to go down to the COO ones. Some of this work, we've been conservative in our time estimates, and now that we have the COO and the CSO joining us, we have more integrated leaders to support this work, and it may be, I didn't want to put too much pressure on them to have things done within the first 3 months joining the city. They've hit the ground running and they're making great progress. So some of the projects that the COO is working on, the integration of the facilities management, the asset management, we may be able to see success and completion of those by mid-2017. So we're trying to be measured and realistic in our timeframes and not over-promise and under-deliver. but still knowing that decisions need to keep coming at you constantly. Another reason why not everything is being done at the upfront is these are big decision-making processes for council. And it's about the ability to do the day-to-day work and then also have council feel like it's informed and has the information and all the things that you want to know about are in front of you so you can make those decisions for the electorate. So we don't want to rush you through this work. It's going to take us time, but we're quite excited about this. This is great to finally be rolling up our sleeves and getting an implementation plan and bringing stuff in front of you. And it's good to see the success and the cooperation with staff. And we're looking forward to presenting these to you as we move forward.
Thank you. And I had two topics. The second one on page 129 that I wanted to bring up was just number 11 on the options. And if I understand that correctly, to Mr. Mima's comments about things that we can kind of do sooner or earlier in this process with VICC, et cetera. And number 11 reads that the City of Nanaimo decide on available opportunities to reduce expenditures and streamline operations. Is there a consolidated list that you think meet that number 11? Or would you like us to come up with available opportunities to reduce expenditures inside the core services review and outside of it? Like, it sounds nice. It rolls out nice. I'm just wondering what those are, if they haven't been identified already.
So through the chair, the core service review did identify some areas where there could be some savings. And beyond that, between council and staff, through the Finance and Audit Committee, we will be working through possible areas where there could be savings that we could look at. And as we develop the calendar for that committee, part of what we'll be asking you to provide us with is a list of areas you want us to look at. Some may simply be information reports, others may be decision points. So there is that opportunity for council through that committee to identify additional areas.
So, thank you. I'm still not quite clear on what those opportunities that you think they are, and or will we be receiving those opportunities to reduce expenditures and streamline operations? Is there a list?
Yes.
Or is it a work in progress list? It's an organic list, I'm guessing. But this is a public document. I think I know what some of those might be or have been identified already. I'm just seeking to know if there's others that I don't know, and if I don't, because they haven't been presented yet, when might these other streamlining opportunities be presented to us so we can do exactly what it says, decide on available opportunities. The word in there for me is decide.
So on page 23 of the Core Services Review final report, it's in the executive summary. You don't have it in front of you. It's the 250-page one. It talks about number 11. That's the 11th theme, efficiency and streamlining. And it lists a number of things. It gives examples of what can be done. One is dealing with the automation with garbage trucks and bins. Another series ones are eliminating and reducing positions, the vacant management positions, culture and heritage, the gender guarding. Another series is through increasing revenues, negotiate different policing arrangements, parking fees, clarify bylaw 7073, do consolidative space requirements, close the CPSO, prepare a facilities master plan, potentially sell 89 Predo, Departure Bay Activity Center, and Bevan Pool. And then they have a series of operational improvements, which is our capital projects, process, purchasing, transportation, and operations. So there are a ton of things that the Core Services has identified to be done, and we've divvied those up for people to bring in front of you. So, and as we move through and we identify other ways of saving monies, obviously those will be brought forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank Ms. Samra and her staff for putting together this implementation plan that's easy to read, easy to follow, sets out for me the decision points that, or the points where we will be making decisions. That's good to know what's coming up in the future, what I need to prepare for, how I can answer people who say to me, when are you going to be making a decision on this or that? So that's in here. I think it's a really good companion document to the Core Services review itself, and I thank you all for the work you've done on it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, I'm happy we're at the stage we're at. It's been a ways since 2009 and instituting a service review of what we do. So I am excited. I'm glad we're working on our strategic plan. We're talking about fixing our reports. We're talking about reviewing Bylaw 7000. I do concern myself with the calculation of what we add for value for every dollar we put in, what do we get back? So I'd like to work more on that over time. Improving our IT systems. I guess the biggest thing for me is the reports, the files, and those things that are coming with some of this accountability is huge. And I think the public appreciates the fact of accountability and being open. So I support the motion that's on the floor for the information and the attached reviews.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Can we have a motion to approve in principle the recommendation on page 127, please? Moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Bestrick. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now, next item is Core Services Review, Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, and it's on your green sheets. And I expect there will be a presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to take my time with this one and read largely from the report, because it's a collaborative effort amongst staff to put this information together. As I referenced in the last agenda item, Council is considering how its funds tourism, economic development, destination marketing, and conference marketing with its entities, Vancouver Island Conference Center, but the real entity that we're talking about is the contractor, the operator at Lifica, as well as DMBIA and the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. And the NEDC is a municipal corporation. The city sought the approval of the Inspector of Municipalities back in 2011 to incorporate it. And while it is arm's length and structured to deliver a full range of economic development and tourism services within the city of Nanaimo, it is still a municipal corporation. And there's a unique relationship between the shareholder, the city, as represented by Mayor and Council, and its municipal corporation. It's arm's length, but because it is a municipal corporation, there are additional reporting requirements that are required under the community charter, and permission has to be granted from the Inspector of Municipalities in order to incorporate that. So it's been in operation for, I think this is year 6 now, and the Core Services Review was asked to take a look at the NEDC structure and compare it and benchmark it against other similar-sized municipalities. It looked generally at its funding levels, its range of services and programs, and took a look at what is the best model for economic development, or a best practice for the delivery of economic development services at the municipal level. It concluded that a municipal corporation is a best practice with respect to the economic development, and made recommendations to address some of the other issues that it identified during the review of it. The consultants for Western Management Consulting Firm interviewed dozens of stakeholders within the economic development and tourism sectors in generating its recommendations and findings for the report. It didn't, however, take an audit of the governance functions or look at an evaluation of the program services and programming to determine if the targets and performance measures were in sync. So it was a limited review because it was part of a massive core services review. It gave the city a couple of options in terms of how to move forward. And those are in the report. Continue with the funding level beyond 2017, contingent on a new 5-year strategic plan, new accountability strategy, and the development of an overall Nanaimo economy and partnerships. It also gave Council the ability to consider reducing the funding starting in 2017. The core services also looked at the VICC, which is at Lithika, and they reviewed the operations and made a number of recommendations to reduce city subsidies and improve conference operations. The review concluded that a collaborative destination marketing plan did not exist and that an important element to the success of the VICC is for the city to, 1, develop and implement a credible marketing destination strategy via a collaborative effort with all interested parties, 2, enhance and add to the main attractions of Nanaimo and also consider the hotel. The CBRE consultants also interviewed dozens of stakeholders in the tourism sector and the hotel sector in putting together its report, and it did make some findings on the VICC and hotel that are pertinent to the operations of NEDC. The CBRE report determined that despite Tourism Nanaimo's mission to promote Nanaimo as a year-round leisure tourism destination and as an attractive location to hold meetings, conventions, and sporting events, it has not strategically planned or implemented any marketing activities specifically directed towards conference and destination markets. As a result, no collaborative destination marketing plan exists between Tourism Nanaimo, which is part of NEDC, VICC, or the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. The consultants recommended, among other things, that the city adopt a conference and destination sales strategy to bring conferences to Nanaimo. So based on these two reports, independent reports by consultants, staff took those findings and engaged in consultation over a 4-month period with NEDC, VICC, DMBIA, and other key stakeholders on the economic development and tourism fronts. Most recently, the city hosted roundtables on economic development and tourism. The economic development roundtables suggested that the economic development stakeholders would benefit from clarifying their roles and working relationships. Another theme that emerged was the need to work with existing industry leaders to ensure that Nanaimo puts its best efforts forward in the competitive economic development sector. The Tourism Roundtable revealed overlap and duplication of tourism activities among the various stakeholders and the lack of a centralized body to coordinate and communicate their efforts. In addition, there were some challenges with the operation of the Tourism Leadership Committee and the delivery of programming associated with the agreement between the city and the Nanaimo Hospitality Association for the municipal and regional district tax funds for targeted tourism activities. The way forward is for the city to The city is committed to economic development and NEDC. In a phased approach, the city is ready to move forward with a more focused mandate for NEDC, supported by a new partnering agreement, an accountability framework that ensures clear roles, enhanced communication, and responsive financial and operational oversight. Recently, Council has made a decision, and despite the challenges identified via the supplied reports, consultations, and reviews, the City acknowledges that NEDC is led by a committed board whose membership and work has Nanaimo's best interest in mind with respect to the success of the City's economic development function and its tourism potential. However, while the board's guidance of economic development is very well suited, challenges surrounding the complexity of the organizational interconnections associated with tourism and destination marketing require a renewed attention. Therefore, following a discussion of an in-camera report, Council moved and seconded that, number 1, the City deliver economic development services through the NEDC and deliver tourism, destination marketing, and conference marketing service through one or more alternative service providers. 2, staff implement an accountability strategy for the NEDC, Vancouver Island Conference Center, and DMBIA, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association, as follows. Adopt a new partnership agreement that ensures compliance by the city and NEDC with statutory obligations and strengthens corporate governance. Sub B, direct staff to develop options to achieve administrative efficiencies and enhanced value for our money among city-funded entities, NEDC, VICC, and DMBIA by October 31, 2016. Staff to invite NEDC, VICC, and DMBAI to present annual operating budgets at the new Finance and Audit Committee by November 30th, 2016, and by November 30th, 2016, propose 2017 funding levels for each of these entities. And I can report that staff have met several times on the efficiencies, and the first phases have identified the potential for $120,000 cost savings each year. So it's well over $500,000 over a 5-year period of time. There's more that might be achieved for relocating each of these entities in a different location. What has been presented to the boards of these organizations is the potential for the economic development part of NEDC to move into Square One, and for the tourism and DMBIA to join Atlifica at the Vancouver Island Conference Center. So you have a mini hub of tourism and destination marketing and downtown business improvement together. We'll continue to have those go forward. Staff have also met with each of the organizations and sent letters asking for them to prepare alternative budgets for presentation to Council at the Finance and Audit Committee. Atlifica has already come forward, and the next two will be coming forward in the November meeting. And at the end of this phased approach, hopefully the types of information and cost savings we find working together. And at the staff level, it's been tremendously successful. And there's been excitement about the relocation and having these groups together and being able to cross-pollinate and share ideas. We're also going to continue, which is the third part of the motion, is to continue the stakeholder engagements with the tourism and conference stakeholders to make recommendations on how to best use public funds to deliver tourism and destination marketing. And this is a phased approach, and I know I've said that a number of times, but progress needs to be made on different fronts in order to be able to suss out all the different types of options that are available. Atlifica has been advised that their agreement, which terminates in March 2017, will not be renewed, and that they're welcome to bid on an expression of interest for providing a fuller range of services to the city of Nanaimo, which we hope to put out by the end of October, so that we have a gauge of interested parties that might step forward, and that'll allow staff to further examine the options for conference and tourism. There's a lot of successful models on Vancouver Island. Staff at the different municipalities and regional districts have said they're available to share how they've approached it. So there's no shortage of models that will be brought forward in front of Council, and hopefully with the collaboration of the NEDC board, with the Tourism Leadership Council or committee, and all of the other stakeholders who we've been working with, we'll be able to work together as a community and come up with the ideas that are best for the community and bring those forward to Council for consideration.
Thank you. Before we go into the proposed motion, subsequent to this report, any questions? Delegation? No? Okay. Thank you. Would the clerk read out the proposed motion, please?
Nanaimo Economic Development Commission provide the city with a response to the new partnering agreement for the delivery of economic development, along with the proposed efficiencies following the Nanaimo Economic Development Commission board meeting on October 20th, 2016.
Thank you. Is there a mover and seconder for the motion?
I'll move that motion.
Councillor Fuller, I'm going to give him that one. Councillor Fuller's moved it. You can second it. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Pratt. And speaking to the motion, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. So we're going to exercise a vote on this motion before receiving this report to make the public aware of the motion passed. And so it says here, the purpose of the report that we just had was to make public the motion passed by council during an in-camera meeting held October the 3rd, which we just received a report and update on concerning the Economic Development Corporation. Because I have some questions that I would like to ask as it relates to the report that we just did. The motion that's just been read out is fine, but when do I get to talk about or ask questions about the contents of this, the subject matter of core service review that we just received?
Anytime, Councillor.
Your Worship, may I read out the whereas clauses for that motion?
Okay. Go ahead.
Whereas the City of Nanaimo is the sole shareholder of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, a municipal corporation, and whereas the City is responsible for reporting to community on the use of public funds on an annual basis and is obligated by generally accepting accounting standards to consolidate the operations of its municipal corporation in its annual financial statements. And whereas the Core Services Review Report recommends that the City adopt an accountability plan for Nanaimo Economic Development Commission, and whereas the City wishes to implement an accountability plan to find efficiencies, strengthen government practices, and provide for open and transparent reporting to the community regarding the delivery of economic development, tourism, destination marketing, and conference marketing. And whereas the City has engaged Nanaimo Economic Development Commission at the staff and political level, provided a copy of the proposed partner agreement, and met with the board to discuss it on 2 occasions. Therefore, be it resolved that Council requests that the Board of Nanaimo Economic Development Commission provide the City with a response to the new partnering agreement for the delivery of economic development, along with the proposed efficiencies following the Nanaimo Economic Development Commission Board meeting on October 20th, 2016.
Yep. Councillor Fuller.
Oh, I didn't even notice I had pushed that button. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I asked the question, because that's considerably more information than what we were going to vote on, or what the motion was. So it stands to reason to me that the narrative contained within, from my thinkings, indicates that we've already made decisions on how we're going to proceed. Decisions have already been made that we're going to proceed with this function and this function and this function. We're just going to consolidate and potentially save in the neighborhood of $120,000 a year, which comes from office rent. That's what that is. So it doesn't appear to me as that there's very many decisions for us to make once the terms of reference for the NEDC operation is provided back to us following their meeting this Thursday. Then it seems to me the deal is done. If I'm in terms of the consolidating DMVA, VICC, at Lithic, and we stand at this time to realize a gain of $120,000 on rent recovery. If that's what I'm understanding, and then sometime between then, whatever then is, October 31st, but we don't have a meeting that day, and November the 30th, and November the 30th being the date when staff is going to make recommendations, as it says, direct staff to propose 2017 funding levels for NEDC, VICC, and Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association by November the 30th. If there's consensus of all of the good efforts and all the hard work and all the energy and all the successes that is going into consolidating these operations to deliver economic development, all of those initiatives, then is November the 30th moot?
Okay, so one of the challenges that council is going to have is that you have incomplete information in front of you at this point. And until we explore what an alternative operator for the conference center looks like and what that will cost, that work has to happen. And until you have DMBIA present a budget with 100% matching funds, 50% matching funds, or 0% matching funds, we don't know what that will look like. So each of these organizations are now going to come in front of council at the Finance and Audit Committee and present budgets. With the decision point of NEDC delivering economic development services only and not the tourism, they're going to be coming forward with a budget for that line of service delivery. And staff is still working on what are you going to do with the other $800,000, probably over $1 million, that is being used in tourism, destination marketing, conference marketing. If you look at the different pots of money, they go well over $2 million. So we're untangling this web little bit by little bit to understand what we have in front of us. And what council's done is provide direction to staff to look at a modest efficiency, which is space sharing. Instead of having 3 leased places and instead of being in 5 different locations, you're seeing these organizations share space, and that has 2 benefits. 1, financial, 2, operational and integration, because our consultants are telling us that these organizations could work better together, that there is duplication, and integration is a good outcome. So by having them working side by side in the same office space, we may find more of those efficiencies happening. So it's step by step, but council still is going to be making decisions about how much you're going to give NEDC, how much you're going to give a DMBIA, and how much are you willing to pay an operator to run the Vancouver Island Conference Center. And we're going to be looking at more than one model. It depends on what comes in with the RFP. It could be like Victoria. It might make financial sense that the city assume some of the workforce that are here that are providing not the destination marketing services, but the operational facilities management services of this. There may be more economic for the city to do that. So we need to have those exploratory discussions, and we're doing it on an expedited system. We've got 45 days to figure this out, and it is very complex. So we're just trying to make it possible for us to move together. There's a lot in the partnership agreement. The partnership agreement is about addressing governance and financial reporting and transparency. So what council has asked the NEDC is to prepare an annual budget, share it with council, and at a high strategic level, indicate where they're going to use city funds to provide economic development so that council knows what NEDC is going to do for ECDEV next year. They have 3, 5, 10, whatever activities they are. And that provides more information to council as well. It also provides ability for council to check in periodically to see how those funds are being used, because council is the shareholder and you need to know how public funds are being spent by your municipal corporation. Now the focus is on ECDEV. We've taken out the more complex one where there's been more difficulty solving it on the tourism. We're going to deal with that separately. That'll be coming forward in a couple weeks. I don't have the answers for you today. It requires more work. So while what we're asking, or what this phased approach that council has adopted allows us to work these things through. Because what you have in the core services review isn't enough to make fully informed decisions about how to deal with these three organizations. I know I'm being extremely long-winded on this, but it's not easy.
Final comment, if I may. Thank you very much for that. So then, on page 14D, it indicates that staff to propose 2017 funding levels not later than or by November the 30th, 2016. So we will be in a position to have that, as well as the updated information, I trust, coming back from CRBE and various other entities of metrics and how the metrics were arrived at on information and data that we're being asked to make decisions on, based on. We will have all of this in advance of that November the 30th decision day. Correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hong, you're next.
Thank you. Not to be ignorant, but are we talking about the motion that's on the floor right now, or are we referring to the report? Because I'm just a little confused on what we're talking about. So, but we have a motion on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor.
But
and
we're
I
not
think
discussing what the motion is. We're discussing the report. So I'm just a little confused on.
I'll be happy to answer that.
Sure.
The mayor said, anytime you wish, Councillor Bestwick. I asked the question, when can we talk about this report? When there's a motion that was read by Ms. Armstrong and just the first portion of the motion, which then following that was the whole motion with the whereases read out. I said, well, when do I get a chance to discuss this report? And if I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but I do believe that the mayor said, anytime you want, Councillor Bestwick. So that's why we're talking about the report with a motion on the floor, because the mayor gave me permission to do so.
Yeah, well, I understand. I don't understand why we're talking, because, like I said, I think that the motion was only the first part of this report. It was only about the partnership agreement, I think, then we expanded it. So I get where you're coming from. So I'd just like to know if we should move forward with this and then come back to this report and discuss the report as a whole, or are we going to start talking about this one little part? Because I have questions about, I'll talk about the motion, but I would like to come back to this report. October the 20th is where we're expecting.
Excuse me, Councillor Hong, I appreciate your point, and I think you're right on. I think possibly, in my opinion, the motion was premature because we did not have a chance to discuss the report first. So I'm going to suggest, and I'll take advice here, that we might table that motion until after discussion. Would that be the easiest way of handling this, Ms. Armstrong?
That would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to table the motion so that we can have further discussion on the report. Okay. Councillor Hong, and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion on the motion to table? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So now we'll continue discussion on the report, and we'll come back to the motion later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So if I can continue, I guess, then on to the second part of my question. In coming back to us on November 30th, I don't think that we have a Finance and Audit Committee. And again, that's just a committee. So then that has to come to a council table, and then we have to discuss this at a council table. So with the beginning of the funding for 2017, are we going to give them the full amount as we did this year? When are we going to have a decision to make? Are we going to have enough time to discuss the budget stuff? Thank you.
Mr. Mema.
Okay, through the chair, the process as we have it now, the timelines that you have, October 31st and November 30th, would work to discuss the 2017 budget. What we've done today was to issue some budget guideline letters to each of these organizations talking about possible scenarios. So if we take NEDC as an example, the fact that Council has decided that they will not be providing tourism. So the budget that they will bring forward would reflect that. So it would not include the tourism aspect of it. That budget would also have to reflect the savings identified to date in terms of accommodation. And the conversations still continue in terms of possible additional savings. And by the time we get to that deadline, the number would probably be a little bit more than what it is now. So at this point, yes, Council through the Finance and Audit Committee will still have that presentation of the 2017 budgets come through them, and they would reflect the decisions that have been made so far as outlined in terms of who is going to provide which service.
All right.
I'd like to supplement that answer as well. There's going to be, the first quarter of 2017 is going to be a transition period because the contract with Atlifica doesn't terminate till the end of March, and any transition, so we're going to be asking in the budget for a 3-month transition period for 2017 and working with each of the partners to come forward on that.
Thank you. Good, Councillor Hong. Councillor Fuller, you're next.
I'm going to hopefully simplify this. What you're saying is that you are moving forward with the motion that's in the report, and that the first motion that was being proposed, which I can't talk about yet because it's been tabled, is actually part of the greater motion A. Is that what you're saying? You're moving forward with it. We will be making some decisions as outlined in the report by November 30th, 2016, or as best as capable as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to the staff, their decision on page 14 that we're about to vote on, I'm assuming pretty soon. So I don't want to put too many carts ahead of, we're not? Sorry?
Receiving the report for information with an update on staff. It's because it was done in camera, but portions of it have happened out in the public, so this motion has made its way into the public domain. I know. So this is receiving the report as an update. The additional motion was discussed to move the timelines along, and by asking NEDC to get back to council sooner rather than later with respect to the partnering agreement and their desire to space share.
So just for my own sometimes confusion, so there's nowhere this evening we're saying status quo, put our status quo as is, because I look forward to that conversation about the staff recommendations about breaking away from status quo, because the status quo, in my view, is not working. So we await that decision, and I'll wait for that. So I'm ahead of the cards this time. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I don't see any other speakers regarding the report. So a motion to receive, Councillor Fuller, seconded Councillor Yoakum. Any other discussion? To receive the report, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And now I guess we need a motion to bring the original motion back onto the table.
Lift from the table.
Lift from the table. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Councillor Pratt and Councillor Hong seconding. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that motion is now back for discussion. Ms. Armstrong, do you have the motion again, please?
Whereas the City of Nanaimo is the sole shareholder of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, a municipal corporation, and whereas the City is responsible for reporting to community on the use of public funds on an annual basis and is obligated by generally accepting accounting standards to consolidate the operations of its municipal Corporation in its annual financial statement, and whereas the Core Services Review Report recommends that the city adopt an accountability plan for NEDC, and whereas the city wishes to implement an accountability plan to find deficiencies, strengthen governance practices, and provide for open and transparent reporting to the community regarding the delivery of economic development, tourism, destination marketing, and conference marketing. And whereas the city has an engaged NEDC at the staff and political level, provided a copy of the proposed partnering agreement, and met with the board to discuss it on 2 occasions. Therefore, be it resolved that council requests that the board of NEDC provide the city with a response to the new partnering agreement for the delivery of economic development, along with the proposed efficiencies following the NEDC board meeting on October 20th, 2016.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on that motion? I don't see any speakers at this point. Now I do. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regards to the date, October the 20th, that's their board meeting, but that doesn't say that when we get an answer. It actually doesn't give us a date. It says for them to make a decision on the 20th, but if they don't tell us, shouldn't it be a date where they're informed the city? I don't really care when they meet. They can meet tomorrow, next week, as far as I'm concerned. I would like an answer by a date, not when they meet. That's not my concern. So can we reword it where we're actually getting an answer instead and not their meeting date? I don't know if that's good with council or not. Thank you.
There could be a friendly amendment at the very end, following the NED board meeting on October 20th, and with a response to council within so many days.
What staff recommend? How many days would it take for them to respond?
Summer.
It's really up to council. We've shared the partnering agreement with them and had an initial meeting, council to board, and then there was a follow-up meeting with their board and the partnering agreement. So they've had it for a period of time. So it would be helpful to move it along because we have tight time frames, but I leave that to council to decide.
I don't see it necessary to make an amendment to the motion. I think it's pretty clear, following their meeting on October the 20th. Yep. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. In regards to Jerry's, I think it would be simply to say 5 working days. But nevertheless, my question would, and actually not nevertheless, that is important. But my question with staff would be on the 1, 2, 3, the whereas piece. The city wishes to implement an accountability plan to find efficiencies, strengthen governance practices, and provide for open and transparent reporting to the community regarding the delivery of economic development. Should it not just stop right there, period?
I don't have it in front of me.
Because it's why, and it carries on to say tourism, destination marketing, and conference marketing. Because I'm assuming for the whole tourism conversation we just previously had. So right there, if we were to, so
you can restrict it to just economic development, but it's all of those things are before council, and you're going to be considering them in different contexts. So it just allows the public to know that you're looking at a number of things.
But I thought the tourism was going another direction. So why would it be under the NEDC?
So if I'm reading this correctly, Councillor, while it does say those other items, the motion itself is requesting with respect to the NEDC.
Okay, I have it in front of me, and I think stop it after economic development, strike the rest of it.
That's what I mean,
And
it's put period.
If you would like staff, I think that you do need to set a deadline on having a response.
But just to wrap up my comment, because earlier we just spent talking about tourism, these other entities and whatnot, and then right there, it's because I don't want the great work and upcoming great work they're going to be doing. I don't want to mislead. It sends mixed messaging. Maybe I'm just mixed up here. I like a period after economic development and then blank the rest.
Do you wish to make a motion on an amendment then?
Unless I'm way out left field.
No.
I'll make the amendment then.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor, and that is to, it's been moved and seconded to, in the fourth whereas, that it read, and whereas the city wishes to implement an accountability plan to find efficiencies, strengthen governance practices, and provide for open and transparent reporting to the community regarding the delivery of economic development, period. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment?
Oh, sorry. And I think the second piece of amendment was it 5 working days to report?
Okay. And then at the end.
Well, then don't do it. Sorry, I'm not talking to you.
Okay, so you don't want to. Okay,
I'll
great.
just-
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor. It's been seconded. On the amendment, anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a problem with the amendment, but I guess I read that whereas differently because I do think the city of Nanaimo wants to provide for open and transparent reporting, et cetera, regarding tourism, destination marketing, and conference marketing. I don't think we're necessarily saying that will be done or implying it will be done by NEDC. But if it simplifies the motion in front of us, I'm happy to go along with your amendment.
I can't help thinking it's not regarding NEDC, considering it says NEDC on there and the whole subject's NEDC. Anyways, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fuller, are you on the amendment?
Yeah, I'm good with the amendment. It does clarify, so I can live with that.
Can I now call the question on the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On the main motion now. Any further speakers on the main motion?
Yeah.
Councillor Fuller?
Yes. Now, regarding the date, this is the fun one, because they've had the partnering agreement for a while. It's being discussed. It's been discussed at a number of board meetings that they've had, emergency meetings, yada, yada, yada. Now they could take it to this meeting on the 20th. I would presume that a decision is going to be made on the 20th and that we should hear about that decision on the 21st, the Friday, the day after. If they make a decision at the meeting, they can relay that decision to us the next day. Why wait 5 days? Why wait 3 days? So I would like to see it amended that the decision be referred to us on the 21st of October.
On the 21st. So another amendment. Okay, so Councillor Fuller's got an amendment on the floor, seconded by Councillor Beswick. All right, so now on the amendment, Councillor Beswick. Okay, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I don't know if a freak accident happens on the 20th and the meeting gets canceled. So I would like 24 hours. If they don't meet on the 20th, 20 working days, I don't know. Something that I'm just saying if they don't, but whatever. I think everybody gets the point.
I think one would assume that it would be end of business day on 21st. Yeah. You're okay with that? Okay. Councillor Pratt.
I guess we could assume that if for whatever reason, the meeting didn't take place, because we're saying in the motion after their board meeting on the 20th, or whatever it is, that we would be hearing the next day after that, which is the 21st. And that makes sense. And if they don't have it, then clearly there would be a good reason for that.
All right, so on the amendment, call a question. All those in. Okay. The amendment is following the NEDC board meeting on October 21st and report to council by October 21st. Okay. All right, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now, on the main motion. Councillor Fuller, do you wish to speak on the main motion? Okay. Councillor Hong? Okay. Councillor Thorpe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to express a couple of thoughts, and they're similar to ones that I expressed at a meeting not too long ago. And I think before I vote on this, and I am in support of the motion and the previous report that led up to it. But I feel from my personal point of view, I need to express that I think the core review did indicate that the model that we have been working with an arm's length corporation, was identified as a good model. And I hope to see that continue. I think what we're doing here in this motion is fine-tuning with hopes to improve how things operate more efficiently, more effectively, more openly, and so on, and I certainly support that. I feel that I need to acknowledge that, in my opinion, the NEDC has a very strong board of committed members who have been working on the community's behalf, a talented CAO who has been working on the community's behalf, and I see this as, and I've used the term before, a reset. There have been some struggles with governance, and we're trying to renew the groundwork in a fair way so that everybody knows what their role is and their function is, and improve accountability, which of course I'm in favor of. I like the more focused mandate of the NEDC moving forward on economic development. I think that's where their strength is, and it's so important to our city. I also look forward to a separate focus on destination tourism and conference marketing, which I also see as extremely important, especially as it relates to our conference center. So I think this can be a win-win, and I do support the motion. I think this is just a reset of the new governance partnering agreement, and I'm really hopeful that the NEDC will see that the same way and accept this agreement and come back to us in a timely manner and say, yes, we're ready to move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kep.
Thank you. I'm happy we're moving forward with accountability because I've seen $700,000 a year go out in destination marketing. 2 or 3 reports say that they're not coordinating it and nothing's happening. We spent a lot of money. This building's $100 million. We spent $8 million on economic development over the last 6 years, and from my own view, I'm not certain what I've got for my tax dollars and for what the people that vote for me. I am happy we're moving forward, though. Accountability is huge. The core review was fought for so many years. We could have been way ahead of the game now, would have saved more by now, except for the fighting, the infighting, and the fear of review. So I'm happy this is happening, and I'm happy they're working together. And I'm a bit disappointed that we have to take tourism out of there because we want them all to work together. But I understand it's not working, and we need a new shift. So for me, this is more than just a reset. It's a dynamic change that they need to do. And I'm not happy that we're only saving $100,000 a year, because I'm not fussy with what we've got over the years. When I look at $8 million, it means a lot to me. It means fire halls. It means recreation centers in Harewood. It means, and all of those would be good tourist things, because if we had those things, people would come here to live here and have their businesses. So I support what we're doing, but man, it's late in my view. We should have done this a long time ago. And I'm really afraid this has already been almost 6 months since the core review is out. We knew this was coming, and we're afraid to make a decision on it. And I think the first consultant we had said, if you're not going to implement the stuff, don't waste time. And I'm thinking, man, we're dragging this into 2017 already. Thank you. The vote's close for me.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I echo Councillor Thorpe's comments on the NEDC, and I do think this is a good step forward, what we're doing today. I think the staff have had to have time to look at everything, and I think they've done a good job in bringing us to where we are today. So I really want to thank them for that. This doesn't happen overnight. We knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, and I personally am really pleased with the steps that we've taken now. I do not agree that nothing has happened in tourism. I think there has been a great deal that's happened over the last 8 months. since the change of the CAO at the NEDC, but I also understand why we want to move forward as we have. And so I'm really in support of all of this, and I really look forward to the success of both the NEDC and whatever we decide to do in terms of tourism. And as far as the NBIA is concerned and the Vancouver Island Conference Centre, we all want these things to work. And I think these steps are going to move us in that direction. So thank you to staff for everything they've done to get us here.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I think we all have similar views, and I think we all share concerns as it relates to our tax-paying body. I find a lot of the information since I've been here on council as it relates to topical issues or operations, so much of it is anecdotal, and whatever metrics are used to define the word success or transparency or accountability or otherwise is now becoming more important to the everyday taxpayer. And we sit here with that role and responsibility to ensure that the dollars that are spent, that are collected and spent, are spent with the best interest and as wisely as possible. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing. If everything was as good as we would think it is or like it to be, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So clearly it isn't. And so clearly we have to make a fundamental shift in the cultural manner in which and how we conduct our affairs. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. That's fair. We have to be adjudicated and frequently. And if the coach is doing a great job, he probably is still behind the bench. If the coach isn't doing a great job, he's probably not behind the bench. So here we are having to, there's a reason why we're here having this conversation. So I don't think we can overlook the shift that's happening and the responsibility that we have to ensure that we're doing what's responsible. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I'm looking forward to the information coming forward for November the 30th, not just on this matter in the core service review, but many of the others as well. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Well, for me, this piece is the most seriously weak part of the core services review. I didn't ever get the sense that the consultant, WRC, really had an accurate understanding of the NADC, nor did I think they understood the environment within which the corporation and the city worked. So I also think that the WRC's comment in this instance is a comment on performance, even though they protest that they didn't do a performance review. I think that is inconsistent with the limits of their review. So I'm really not confident that the fix presented is actually related to the work being done or to the quality of the work that the NEDC is doing. Because I think that they are doing a very good job. I think that, as with any organization, there are always ways of improving work. But I, for one, was and remain satisfied with the work that the staff of the NEDC do, and very confident in the board that we have put in place. What I fear is that the fix that we're putting into place may cause more friction and actually may exacerbate any of the current problems that we've identified. So I hope that the goodwill of the parties prevails and that those places where friction is likely to arise, or we know for sure is going to arise, or identified and anticipated, and that the parties are able, after these very tough discussions, that the parties are able to commit to work around those sore points and move forward to everyone's satisfaction, to a point where the city feels that what they want to be done is being done, and that the NADC feels that they're able to do their work with dignity and with an expectation that they are doing a good job, because I certainly have that expectation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fuller.
We're the shareholder. We are the shareholder. The City of Nanaimo is the shareholder for NEDC. It's an arm's length corporation. As the shareholder, you know who's responsible for any of the failings of the NEDC? Perceived, real, or whatever? That's us. The Core Service Review has given us an opportunity to change that. As the shareholder, we are taking that opportunity. I'm glad we're taking that opportunity. And there should be no animosity. There have been a number of different COs for NEDC. There's been questionable stuff in the past. We've got a new CO. I'm actually going to meet him for the first time, I think, tomorrow, which is going to be really cool. And we are going to move forward. But as the shareholder, we're responsible, and we are taking the first step in this. This is the first step.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you. I want to respond to some of the comments. I'm sure you meant WMC report and WRC, and talk about friction. Yeah. I'm positive you meant that. I just wanted to correct you. We've had friction here because in the last couple of months we've asked and requested through our CEO information. And quite honestly, we took a lot of pushback about us being involved. And on my own review, I seen that our staff was embedded previously in almost every decision that the NEDC made. They were constantly there. And then all of a sudden, when we asked, as this group, after the core review, we took pushback. And I'm happy that the people are trying. They're doing some stuff to the best of their ability. When I look at multipliers, what do they use? I understand multipliers, a bit of sort of macroeconomics, and so I'd like to see those figures all the. But the lobby we've had about it, leaving it alone and let it go and don't do anything, for 5 years we've been talking about economic development and the destination marketing spending in tourism. And, it's important that we get the facts on the table, and I think this core review did a good job about pointing out some of the efficiencies and inefficiencies, the competences and incompetences. And I've always struggled with a lack of info. Or been told I'm not smart enough to look at the info. So now I'm saying that the friction is caused bidirectional, because for me, I'm not getting the information I want when I make decisions, and I take that accountability. And I could have not worried about jail guards, not worried about pools closing, not worried about other stuff, if this stuff is in order and doing a great job. I don't want just a good job. I want a great job. And $8 million can buy a lot. So as far as friction goes, a lot of the friction rests right here at this table. It's a lot of the friction.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I just want to state quickly that I personally completely support ECDEV and our amazing city. I respect the hard work of the volunteer board. But when I hear friction, and there's friction between possibly us and NAC, I don't know if there is or not. But one thing I am comfortable on and adamant about is the partnership agreement and accountability that the taxpayers of the city expect from us isn't really it's a non-starter to me. It's a no-brainer. We have to do that. If, for example, the 2014 forensic audit on KPMG definitely demonstrates that we have to have some accountability, and there's nothing wrong with accountability. We should follow the recommendation of KPMG. We have no choice. So if that causes friction by wanting accountability and be accountable to the taxpayers, well, I guess they can call it whatever they want, but that has to happen, and the public expects that. And it should happen, and I expect that personally. So I'm just following the 2014 forensic audit again, and definitely want to champion via support NEC run ECDev stuff. But I don't want the politics getting away because, we don't want to be accountable to the City and Animal Council. That's a non-starter. There's nothing wrong with that. And in my job, I got to be accountable to my board of directors. I'm sure the people around here are accountable to somebody if they do have day jobs. So I just want to state those comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. It's quite frustrating, actually.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo everyone's comments as well. I think the NEDC has made great progress over the last 8 months. I can't comment on what they did previously because I wasn't here. I understand the frustration of the councillors that were here and what they went through to change it and not to get the results that they didn't get. So, and I don't blame the new CAO. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. He was a great CAO for the NEDC, and Development Corporation in Calgary. That's his key. That's his focus. He's great at it. So let's focus that energy to that. Take tourism out. It might not be their strong point. It might be. We're doing change like we did with committees. Well, let's try this. Let's throw this and see if it sticks. Maybe that they progress so well with economic development that we give tourism back to them because they found a way that works. Who knows? We could try Vancouver Island tourism. Maybe they don't work. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it in-house. Maybe it doesn't work. Who knows? So I think that the future is good. I'm excited for them to focus on economic development. A lot of that blame for them, their failure, is also our failure for us not giving them a direction on economic development. That has to do with us and our strat plan. We have a new CAO. We're back on track with the strat plan. Now we're going to, let the NEDC know what we want them to do. And then we can measure. I couldn't measure what NEDC did before because I didn't know what previous council had told them to do on a measurement scale, and we couldn't measure it. So now I'm hoping that we can measure that. And with tourism separated, because I can't see tourism being at arm's length, that's just ludicrous to me. Having tourism not being able to make decisions for our city as an arm's length corporation. Tourism, that doesn't work. Economic development, you can't judge it from tourists coming saying, hey, this is great. You might get a call a year from now that they made a cold call and economic development did, and it could take a year or two to see the results. That's just a fact of economic development. Developers, builders, they'll come when they want to. Tourism, on the other hand, is something that we have to have our finger on. And that is the key why I am supportive of separating this, and I hope understand that the NEDC understands that. I can't accept tourism as an arm's length corporation. That just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, just in closing, that I have the utmost respect for all the principals involved in the WMC group. They're all very talented and experienced individuals in their own right, and they have a lot of experience in delivery of municipal services. And I will give them nothing but kudos. I will also say that I am I hold in high regard each and every board member and each and every staff member of the NEDC. And I believe they've done a very, very good job, and as I say, I hold them in the highest of regard. The core review did, however, say that we had the right formula with respect to economic development, but that there's still more fine-tuning required as far as the delivery of tourism initiatives, including visitor services, destination marketing, conference and meeting planning. And it's hoped that efficiencies can be found and collaboration with not only the partners, but also the stakeholders and to provide the most efficient and effective services available with respect to tourism and tourism development. So I don't see any further speakers. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So next item is question period.
Robert Foley, 3250 Hammond Bay Road. I'm glad that council and staff is looking at, as Tim McGrath says, the alphabet soup. It's been a long time coming. I have a question on accountability. The accountability measures. Is the public going to be able to peruse the expenses of the principals at NEDC, VICC, and the DNBIA, much the same as they are with our own city staff? Or is this still up for question?
Well, I can just say for myself that that's not been an item of discussion with respect to the level of detail that council and our corporation have exhibited in the past. That'll have to be an ongoing discussion with council.
The reason I'm saying this is Mr. Yoakum brought up the 2014 forensic audit of expenses at NEDC with certain players there. And I would just, rather than have to go back through something like that again, if it was all meant all open and above board, it would be far easier to see.
Thank you for your question, sir.
Thank you.
Tim McGrath, 431 3rd, Nanaimo. I'd like to ask council, because I was listening to the discussions here, it would seem that some people on council think that asking somebody to be accountable might hurt their feelings. I agree with Councillor Yoakum. It's our right. As shareholders through the city, we have that right. We want them accountable. We want to know what the metrics are. I hear Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Pratt saying, well, I think they've been doing a good job. I'd like to see the metrics.
Can I have your question, please, sir?
So the question is Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Pratt, when you say you are basing good performance, you like what they're doing, what metrics are you been using to measure them?
I can answer that. Their reports.
And are you going to share that with us? What metrics are you showing?
Reports to council. And that's what I base it on. You asked me a question, and that's my answer.
So I'll ask you another question. Are you going to share that with the city taxpayers? Do you believe in accountability? Are you going to share that with the city taxpayers, those metrics?
I would believe that all the reports that you're referring to are all publicly available.
Yes, they are.
And you're asking her about her views. And I think she's given you the answer, sir.
Well, I don't understand the answer, but we'll go on to the next item. If you think that's the case, then I'll contact Councillor Pratt and ask for the specific reports that she's basing that opinion on.
Next question.
I've got a question on the DNBIA. I'm looking at a report here for the Planning and Design Development Committee in 2015. It says, regarding the Terminal Nickel Corridor, discuss the lack of property owners' participation in the fundraising. A deadline will be set at the next meeting for participation if adequate funds.
Sir, that's not on the agenda tonight.
The DNBIA? Sure it is.
Sir, the TN report, the TN Imagining Project is not on the agenda tonight.
The DNBIA, sir, is on
the TN, as you're referring to, is not on the agenda.
This
tonight.
is part of the core review.
Sir, it's not on the agenda tonight.
The core review is on the agenda tonight, sir.
Next question, please.
So what I would like to know is if that is the case, on their November report of 2016, or March report of 2016, it says that the money's going to be returned to the city. Has that money been returned?
Sir, that is not on the agenda tonight. Do you have another question?
The core review is on there.
Sir,
These questions
Councillor.
A challenge to the chair.
Councillor.
A challenge to the chair.
Councillor.
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Councillor.
A challenge to the chair.
It is not on the agenda.
A challenge to the chair.
It is not on the agenda, sir.
So I have a challenge to the chair. Jane, could you help me with this? I've challenged the chair to say that the DMBA is mentioned a number of times, and it's in the core review, and we have a core review report. We've talked about DMBA, so I've challenged the mayor so I can listen to this.
You're challenging a decision of the mayor?
Yes, so I need a vote by the council to either withstand the chair or go on with the speaker.
There's a challenge to the decision of the chair whether this item is on the agenda or not.
Right.
So we ask for a question, call the question. There's a vote on it. The mayor doesn't vote. Even in a tie, the mayor's defeated. Am I correct?
Correct.
Correct.
As the clerk, can you confirm that the item is or isn't on the agenda tonight?
That's not the question.
That's not her job, Your Worship. It's for council to determine.
The council is allowed to challenge the chair, and that's what.
The question that's on the floor. The question that's on the floor, pardon me, is whether or not that item is on the agenda. I've ruled that it's not on the agenda. The Turnwell Nickel Corridor Initiative is not on the agenda. So I'm asking the clerk for clarification.
Why are you staring at me?
I'm just looking at you, Jim. I'm doing nothing more than looking at you. I'm sorry that's
procedurally.
Please don't
The
look at me
challenge
now.
is on the table. Call the vote on the challenge.
That's it.
I've asked the clerk for a definition, please, for clarification.
Following the bylaw procedure.
I don't find it
She's not
appropriate
as
that you sit
familiar
there.
with it as the rest of us.
Councillors,
yeah.
We are
Councillors.
trying, councillors.
There's a challenge to the chair of the decision that the District of Nanaimo Business Improvement Downtown Business Improvement Association is not on the agenda. So procedurally, there needs to be a vote of council on that.
Thank you.
Needs to be taken.
But the vote is whether council believes that the DMBA is on the agenda and can be questioned. That's because the mayor has said it's not on the agenda and cannot be questioned. So the positive vote would be that council votes in favor that it is on the agenda.
And Ms. Armstrong she's new to the organization. She's a great city clerk. She doesn't have the procedure bylaw in front of her. So we're talking about section 32 of the procedure bylaw. 32.1, whenever the chair is of the opinion that a motion is contrary to the rules and privileges of the council and chair, the chair shall apprise the members thereof without proposing. Which one is it? 32.2, on an appeal by a council member from the decision of the chair, the question shall be immediately put by him and decided without debate. Shall the chair be sustained? And the chair shall be governed by the vote of the majority of the council members then present, excluding himself. In the event of the votes being equal, the question shall pass in the affirmative. If the chair refuses to put the question, shall the chair be sustained? The council shall immediately appoint a chair pro tem. He shall proceed in accordance with section 32.2. A resolution or motion carried under this section is binding.
Can we have a definition of the motion that's being challenged?
It was your ruling, sir, not a motion.
The bylaw, as was just read out, says motion.
Refusing to allow the delegate at the question, item 16, I'm challenging you, Mr. Mayor, that is a topic of tonight's discussion, being embedded in the core review and our reports. And you're saying no, so I'm challenging you on that. All you have to do is ask for a vote if they agree with me or agree with you. That's as simple as that is. It's just a rule that every other organization seems to not have a problem with. Every time you challenge, we're allowed to challenge you.
So we have before us an appeal by a council member of the decision that the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association item is not on the agenda. Or
That's
that
a
it
negative.
is on the agenda.
That's a negative. You can't,
It is
you can't
on the
put
agenda.
a negative motion that it is on the agenda.
Well, I if I may,
So we need.
my point was, my clarification was whether the terminal nickel project is on the agenda. The DNBIA was mentioned tonight, no doubt about it. I will accept that. The question from the delegation was concerning the terminal nickel project.
I'm referring to, and if you want to ask me who asked the question for some clarification, I'm referring to the DNBIA committee meeting notes. So it's the DNBIA. This is not the issue. The issue is referring to the terminal nickel corridor, but it is not about the terminal nickel corridor.
So that's clearly not on the
it's
agenda tonight, sir.
No, it's not. It's the
Point of order.
DNBIA minutes.
Is the minutes of the DNBIA on the agenda tonight, yes or no?
No, not the minutes. The
Well, that's
DNBIA
what you're
is, and I'm
referring to,
asking
sir.
you about their process. Call the vote. Yeah. Arguing with, never mind.
Can there be a vote? Yes. On the question as to whether to sustain the ruling of the chair that the Nanaimo Business Improvement Association is on the agenda.
So, you'll take the chair. I can't participate in the vote.
Before I take the chair?
Certainly.
I need some clarification myself, because as you just indicated, Mr. Mayor, in my mind, the DNBIA is definitely on the agenda. But if the speaker's question relates to the terminal nickel project, then I would say no, it's not on the agenda. So how I vote depends on what the question's about.
There's no debate on this. That's what the procedure bylaw states. There's no debate on this. No debate. We shouldn't
Sir, on a challenge, I'm asking for clarification of what the challenge is.
I made the challenge. Could I try and explain myself? The person is talking and bringing up issues with the DNBIA. As it relates to it, he mentioned something in their minutes. I would like to hear about it because it sounds like it was something that should have been canceled, is what his wording was. The mayor challenged him. We've spent about 10 minutes on trying to figure out the challenge. I'd like to listen to the information on the DNBIA, no matter what it is about the DNBIA. City business.
Then I will take the chair and I will call the question on the challenge to the chair. Shall the chair be upheld? And I will word it that way. Shall the chair be upheld? All in favor? Opposed? So the challenge is successful. The chair is not upheld. Thank you.
So he can continue with his line of questioning.
Your question, sir.
I'm reading from the minutes of the DNBIA Planning dated November 3rd, 2015. It says, discuss a lack of property owner participation in fundraising. A deadline will be set at the next meeting for participation. If adequate funds cannot be raised by the deadline, this portion of the project will be stopped and the funds will be returned to the property owners. So my question is has that money been returned to the city? Plain and simple.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I don't think we ever gave them the money.
I think you better check again. You gave them over $60,000.
That was for a study, not for the actual properties. So we actually own a bunch of property along the trench.
That was the fundraise. Have you read the minutes, sir? It's referring to the fundraising for the study. You gave them the $60,000.
We did this study. We actually have a report. They're presenting it at the end of the month.
Did you get your money back? They say in their minutes that they're going to return the money to you. They're going to set a deadline. You're not following what the DNBIA is saying, and that's exactly my point. You don't know what the DNBIA is doing.
I think
that's the purpose of the question.
Can Mr. Lindsay shed some light on this?
Sorry, thank you, Worship. I think we're actually talking about two different things here. The first is we're talking about the drinking water exemption and the work that was done, was underway by DNBIA to work with landowners in the area to look at having the soil remediation standards, specifically the drinking water standards, released from this area. And at that time, Council had allocated some funds to participate in that study. The city set aside those funds but never transferred them to DNBIA, so we continue to hold those funds separately. The second part is there's reference to a separate study about the Terminal Nickel Corridor road improvement studies, which is work that's been underway by the committee, and I think is what Councillor Hong is referring to, the work that's been wrapping up. And I believe you received a presentation from Mr. Moss last week or the week before Council on that project.
And that project, I believe, received funding from DNBIA, NEDC, and the city.
So, Mr. Lindsay, you're telling me that the money has been allocated, but it has never been advanced? Thank you. Simple. Wasn't that easy?
Forward to staff, so if your point
I
is
absolutely
confusing.
will. Yep.
It's confusing to me of what study it is or what those minutes are. We don't ever get to see those minutes, I don't believe.
I'll be more than happy to sit with Mr. Lindsay and go over it just to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Fuller.
I was curious, through you to staff before staff leaves. Would all of that be considered part of an operating budget of the DNBIA to have that in their operating budget and the costs associated with it? Because in the agenda from tonight, in our report, we've directed staff to invite Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, Vancouver Island Conference Center, and the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association to present annual operating budgets. So that, to me, that sounds like something that should be in an operating budget.
So the new recommendation from staff with the Finance and Audit Committee is a change of process for council and these stakeholder groups. Instead of automatically flowing monies without budgets being presented, the new process is for each entity to come forward with their operating budget, present it to council so that they have knowledge about what will be done. Part of the core services review recommendations on grants and PTEs and how those are done throughout the city are also being looked at so that funds aren't double and triple dipped.
Excellent.
Sir.
Les Barkley, Nanaimo. I have a question about the Chief Administrative Officer's report on the Economic Development Corporation. I'm sure council and staff is familiar with the metaphor shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. I am all in favor of savings and efficiencies. I am not in favor of being bamboozled. Ms. Samra spoke of $500,000 in savings from consolidating the VICC, the NEDC, and the Did I get it right? DNBIA in the convention center. Is that right? Okay. So what I would like is an assurance from council and staff that they will not trumpet both those savings and the increased revenues from the increased revenues to the VICC. That's the shuffling the deck chairs reference that I make. One is fine, not both.
So one of the things that our CFO has undertaken is that the city has had differential treatment of each of the entities in terms of who gets tax receipts or not. The methodology coming forward is this is a city-owned business, and these are city-funded entities, so collecting rent from them isn't the best approach to doing that. So, and this is just the first phase and the first step of finding efficiencies. It certainly will not represent the end game as we move forward.
So I can be assured if I look in reports and the VICC says we've increased revenues by $120,000 a year, that will not come from these rates.
It does not result in rent collection by the city nor by the operator of this facility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
I just want to comment to the last delegation, last speaker, that this goes a little bit deeper than just the to the comment that you made. In fact, we paid to be here tonight. And in fact, the city paid themselves about $180,000 last year to be here for events and meetings and activities and dinners. And so we paid ourselves that, which goes toward the revenue of the Bank of Ireland Conference Centre.
Any other questions?